Everybody, ready? Okay, welcome everybody to the Select Board meeting for October 12th, 2021. We'll call the meeting to order, and please let's stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. So we don't have any public hearings tonight. We don't have any presentations that I'm aware of, but we do have open time for the public. We've moved that to the beginning of the meetings. So we reserve a few minutes at the beginning here for anyone who has open time, issues to say. We will entertain that at the present time. Anyone who's not on the agenda with an item? Even Tammy, nothing?
Sorry, Tammy Relunas, 298 College Highway. Just want to let everyone know or remind them that this Saturday is the Historical Cemetery Walk. You need to make reservations. Right now, I believe we are booked until 2, so our next are like 2:20 and 2:40. To make reservations, please email clarkchapman1827@gmail.com. Thank you.
Great.
It's the event starts from 1 and goes to 1 to 3.
Right. You're doing groups of like 10 people or something, is that right? Yeah, perfect. Okay, very good. No one else? Oh. All right, good. Well, that's a short open time this evening, so therefore we'll just keep moving on. We may have Jessica up a little earlier than planned. Glad you're here early. Anyway, good. Well, we're going to continue with our notion of the committee, commission, board reports. This is something we've started this year to get online with more direct information from the committees themselves. As you know, all of us are liaisons to just about all the committees, not everyone, but to many of the committees. And so we do try and attend when we can and report back what we know, but it doesn't necessarily give the fullest picture each time. So we wanted to make space at least twice a year to hear from the committees themselves, and we had suggested a bit of an outline that they could follow. Some of it doesn't necessarily apply in terms of some of the committees, but nonetheless. So I would like to start with that, and thank you for sending in your reports ahead of time. It gives us a little bit more of an idea what's going on, so it gives us a chance to read through them. So the evening tonight we have Community Preservation, Conservation Commission, Open Space Committee, and the Parks Commission. And the Parks Commission people are not available tonight. The chair is out of town and has not designated someone, so we have moved him to next meeting. So Parks is going to come on next meeting. There was nobody else available to show up this evening, and he asked that we push it off until he was back in town. So that is the case. With that, let's start with the Community Preservation Committee. Virginia.
Excuse me if it's all right. I can't talk through that.
That's okay.
I'm Virginia Ahart, the chair of Community Preservation. And this is the 20th anniversary of community preservation in the state of Massachusetts, when the act was passed and towns and cities began to opt in. Southampton jumped in very early, which was great, because we got started and began to know what's going on. I think most of you probably know quite a bit about it, so I'm not going to go back through all of that. I will say that there are several things going on right now, and we'll talk about that, and if you got questions, I'll try to answer it, or if you have questions about the makeup of the committee or what we actually do. But right now, we're waiting till the mid-October to see what our state grant will be. And the state grant comes to us based on what we put in through our surcharge. So by having the 3%, which is the highest, we have a good base, and then we stay in the rounds of giving out till the last round. So we've done quite well. There were years, of course, at the beginning when we got 100% match, but, and then that was several years. We did drop one year to as low as 58%. It's based on a fee, and it's earmarked by the state on a fee on deed transactions. And that fee had been $25 per transaction. And after 19 years, the state looked at it and said everything else has gone up. So this is the first year their income is based on a $50. And that means we should probably be doing pretty well, especially considering the hot real estate market this year. We're hoping anyway. The second thing I'd like to bring to your attention, and I like it the way it is, I've been working with this for a long time, is that most of our members, 7 of our 9 members, come from other committees, commissions, boards of the town. There's only 2 of us that represent we're elected by the town and represent the townspeople. Why I'm bringing this before you is I don't want to change that. I like having people from each of these committees, commissions, but it does put a little strain on them, especially if through the somebody like our select board member, and she's got other committees assigned to her from the select board and a couple select board meetings a month. Many of them are really strained, and sometimes we're really scratching to get that quorum that we need. But right now, I can tell you who the committees are that send us people. The state requires that the Housing Authority, Conservation Commission, Historical Commission, Park Commission, and let's see, Planning Board. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I almost forgot the planning thing. Mm-hmm. That's okay. And then the 2 that were added by the town were Finance and Select Board. Mm-hmm. And then Janet and I have been elected, Janet Brown and I. However, we have, right now, we have 2 articles headed toward the special town meeting. One is a kind of interesting, it's a coalition through the Pioneer Valley Planning has put this together. It's a coalition of the cities and towns that have a part of the old New Haven, Northampton Canal. And it is what are they calling themselves? Let's see. Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, New Haven, Northampton Canal Project. And that's, let's see, Westfield, Russell, Southampton, Easthampton, Southwick, start there, and Easthampton and Northampton. And they have all contributed some money toward paying this. They're going to be mapping the canal. And with the hope that they can get it on to the National Registry of Historic Places. The canal in Connecticut is on that. This was, the first attempt to do this was probably 15 years ago. We had people that worked very, very hard on this. I imagine that when Dick Frary turned over his stack of papers to the Historical Commission, that he alone had it. He probably had a stack like this. But for some reason, it fell through, and it never happened. Now, it is in Connecticut. Connecticut is on the registry. So we would like to get this on. Plus, when they came and talked to us, we found out that Southampton has the most visible and marked parts of the canal of any of the towns or cities here in Massachusetts. It actually went right between the Gorrell House at the end of Brickyard and the Howland House, which is next down by the pond. And in fact, the Gorrell place was a depository where people moving goods would leave the goods, load them on another boat or whatever. And you can see a part of the canal right there. You can also, if you're really looking, see a part of it in the landscape as it went on up from there. Eventually, of course, the railroad came and put the canal out of business, actually ran along where a lot of the canal was. So one of the things that will be voted on, we hope affirmatively, is the small stipend that goes into helping with that. It's $20,000 out of historical. And you probably do know that we have funds in historical and open space recreation and in housing. But we also, they have to have 10% of the income from the state put in them every year for just their use. But we do have considerable undesignated money. Plus, of course, we have our own, designated historical.
Okay. So that'll be an article coming up for the special.
That will be an article coming up. They're the committee's getting kind of antsy because, of course, it's much easier with a city. So Westfield, Easthampton,
Well, they'll have to take their chances.
Northampton, you only have to convince the council and get them to read it 3 times and pass it. Where with the towns.
Yeah, it's longer.
But everyone else has some money, and they have already
Okay.
earmarked it, and we're just waiting. The other thing is, is the Greenway. And there was a grant. Maybe, Ed, do you want to tell what you know? Because I'm just going on what you know.
I did present at the last community preservation meeting and a request from the Greenway Committee to fund $270,000, which is actually the matching amount from the annual town meeting, to be utilized for $170,000 for acquisition and $100,000 for design. The town has received 2 $100,000 grants, one a small town capital through housing, and the other $100,000 from Mass Trails, which both require matches. The theory being, up until the state budget was passed at the beginning of July, community preservation funds were not allowed to be used for acquisition when it's rail banking. We are rail banking, which means that although the probabilities are very, very low, we will acquire the right-of-way from the railroad company, and sometime over the next 99 years, if they decided that shall we say, right-of-way was profitable to be reenacted and rebuilt, they could actually re-energize it and pay the town off and bring it back. However, if you look at the costs of getting it back from the town and then what it costs per mile to actually construct rail line, it's extremely, shall we say, prohibitive. So I think we're in a good place here. When this state budget was passed, there was an attachment to the budget which now allows us to utilize community preservation funds in rail banking instances, which this is. So when that did pass, I thought it might be a good idea. I brought it up to the select board, I brought it up to the Greenway Committee, that we may want to approach the Community Preservation Committee and see if they're willing to do that $270,000 and take it from community preservation funds, which residents have already paid for in other state, shall we say, residents have paid for. And if it does pass, and the community preservation did vote to put it on the town meeting, if it does pass at the town meeting, my recommendation would then at the annual town meeting in May to go back and actually ask to rescind the debt exclusion vote, which was done at the last annual town meeting, and take that off the books. So it would save our taxpayers. And my memory is, I think it was between 10 and 12 cents per thousand.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Good.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I get,
Yeah. So those will be two possibilities coming up. Great.
yeah. So, and it will be coming out of the undesignated funds, which still leaves us with some money to do some other things. We have one more item that had come up from the Park Commission, and there were so many questions. It's, to put in a trail, maybe have a splash pad, some things like that. There were so many questions that we just wouldn't, we'd still be meeting tonight from last Wednesday to try to get all the answers. So we will come back to that. Hopefully we will get it settled in time to get and they have a grant too. Hopefully we'll get it done in time to present a project to the town.
Okay, great.
I don't know, are there any other questions or anything anyone wants to ask?
Jim?
Yeah.
Virginia, thank you for that. So I was only able to look up the past 10 years on the Department of Revenue's website, but in 2012, the average single-value home in Southampton was $268,000, and now in 2021, it's $325,000. So that's a 21.3% increase in what is eligible to be taxed. And as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, the value of your house, you're credited for the first $100,000.
Yes.
Is exempt from the CPA, and then everything above that is taxed
Yeah,
at 3%. And the reason why it's at the 3% is that's the minimum percentage to allow you to be eligible for all the awards throughout the year.
Yes.
So the 3% is really our floor. We don't want a lower percentage than the 3. Would there ever be consideration, since In the past 10 years, the value of the homes have increased by 21%. It stands to reason that in the past 20 years, since we've been doing this, they've increased more than that, possibly raising the exemption from 100 to 125 or to 150 to ease the seniors, potentially, who generally don't have the highest value homes. Just a thought.
Well, I think it's a thought that ought to be looked into and considered. When community preservation began, it went through quite a process of, first of all, it had to both go on the town meeting floor and pass, and then pass a written ballot. The committee really operates at the will of the town. So I'm not sure. I'd have to look into where we could start something like that. But it might be a good idea to look into it.
I think given the history in the past, and you know, I'm a firm believer in the CPA, right? So I'll just say that to start with. But as your opening statements were, they've doubled the registry tax now. So in theory, we're going to double our income coming in. Now, it's going to be less than that probably because more communities will jump on and that dilutes the pot,
Yeah.
Which is somewhat understandable. But if there is a potential time to do an adjustment, this might be the time when the state is actually helping out for once and doubling the registry fees.
Maybe we can follow suit. Not double, but consider a different limit.
So, something to think about,
Idea.
because that would be the folks that would recognize that benefit the most are the ones that have been in their homes for the full 20 years or more and aren't necessarily the new construction that are coming in that are driving the rates up.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I'll have to look into how it might be
Right.
done.
And I did speak to one of your committee members, and he told me that unless you signed off on it, it wasn't going to happen. So that's why I brought it directly to you. Has all the faith in you to make this happen.
As I said, I need to know what the legal steps are.
Right.
I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea.
Great.
Thank you.
And it would probably, I mean, when you stop to think what we're getting from some of the new homes, we probably wouldn't even notice. But it's the legal steps that I'm just not sure of.
Okay.
So, is there any other?
Other questions? Anybody? George, anybody? No. No? Good.
Okay.
Thank you, yes. Oh, Tammy? Yes?
Tamara Lunas, 298 College Highway. Would that be a citizens petition that would have to be done to try to get that?
What, to raise the limit from the 100?
Raise the limit, keep the 3% so that we're still getting the full match, but
100 to the 125%? I don't know. We'd have to-
My guess is it could go either way.
Could be.
I mean, citizens always have the right to bring a petition, but the select board in conjunction with the,
because I know there was a group that tried to do it before, but it was to lower the percentage. But now, if they understand
Yeah.
that if we could increase that, there's several of us that would be very
We'd
happy.
have to look into it and find out
Okay.
what, the legal parameters as well.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, thanks, Virginia. Much appreciate that. Glad to hear that community preservation's got a few things going on. That's good. I know you're always looking for applications, so that's great. Okay, Conservation Commission. And I guess we also have conflicts tonight with Concom. Apparently 2 or 3 members still work until 6 o'clock and could not get here as they were hoping to. So, Ed, you have the report if you'd like to read it on behalf of the chair of Concom.
I'll be happy to.
We have a written report.
Yes, I do. And it's also in your packets too, so. Conservation Commission Quarterly Report, July, August, September 2021. And this was sent to me from their chair, Marla Hank. Current priorities activities. As permits are requested of us, we arrange site visits, hold public hearings, and issue the signed paperwork to the applicant and Mass DEP. During the last 3 months, we received 2 agricultural protection restrictions, 1 abbreviated notice of resource area delineation, 2 certificates of compliance, 1 emergency certificate, and 2 requests for determination of applicability. A forest management plan for the Lyman Family Conservation Area was approved by the Department of Conservation and Recreation. Work on several properties has been delayed due to the amount of rain this year. Work is ongoing to have volunteers help with trail maintenance. Time has been spent related to the Manhan Meadow Sanctuary RTP grants. Plans for the East Street Bridge project were reviewed and approved per the order of conditions which had been issued in 2020. Budget spending status concerns. Not having had the services of a full-time town accountant for months has left the journal entries to our accounts uncertain to us. We request as soon as possible a meeting between the town accountant and the Conservation Commission's treasurer, Art Lawrence, to reconcile the Conservation Commission's entries with the towns for fiscal year '21. Personnel staffing updates, not applicable. Plans, events for next 4 to 6 months. Work should begin on the restoration of the Manhan Meadow Sanctuary trails and replacement of the bridge crossing the Manhan River. Contracts for these projects must be signed. Forestry work should begin at the Alice Brown Conservation Area when it dries out. A crew from the Student Conservation Association will be clearing a trail on our Pomeroy Mountain property. Planning for use of funding from the Attorney General's office for work related to protection of the Manhan River's watershed will be completed, and the work started to remove invasive plants and damaged culverts. Long-term issues for Select Board consideration planning. Southampton should have a conservation agent. Much work has been done in 2017 to hire an agent. The need has not diminished. Suggested tools, resources to help do your job more efficiently or cost-effectively. Having update access to the Conservation Commission's webpage would be more efficient to upload and download files and change text on our page as needed. The Open Space Committee collaborates with other boards, committees, and groups.
Wrong
Open
one.
space.
I think you're done.
Yeah, there's open space.
Oh, there we go.
Just Concom. Very good.
Perfect.
Okay, just Concom. So that's good. So a few issues there.
And just as an
ahead.
added note, I'd like to thank Marla and Art for going out and viewing the erosion control that was put up for Hoyoke Gas and Electric Company's contractor for the directional drilling to move the gas line off the East Street Bridge in preparation for that project. They went out today, so that drilling can start later this week now. Conservation had to approve that erosion control for that to move on.
Okay, good. Given that there's 2 or 3 issues in here, could you give us any idea about what's happening with accounts? Would it be possible to have a meeting? Is this something that our new accountant could help Art with, or is this something that you want to look at as our cleanup to FY21? I mean, I think they're looking at trying to start clean with 22 to know what their beginning balances are, right, for their various accounts, so.
Correct, and you're allowed to throw anything at me you would like, but I am getting mixed messages from the Select Board because it has been stated that the team of our new accountants would focus
Right,
on
should go
22,
forward.
and we would bring someone in to
Right.
work on 21, so.
Yeah, so I think it's a matter of timing. We have said that, and that is, I think, still our position, that we want to have Bradley and Ellen move forward with FY22, but at the same time, we're getting many months into this fiscal year too, so I can understand where various committees are getting a little anxious, not knowing what their account amounts are. So we will talk about that and get back to them in terms of what can be done about that. Anything else in terms of, I know conservation agent, that's something that had been around, I think, before my time, but it had been,
Can I just go back to the
The
account
situation.
thing?
Yeah,
Just to be
sure.
clear, we're just letting the treasurer know that to wait until we have someone for him to work
We-
with. I mean, I don't want him,
Yeah.
emailing the new town accountant. I can
Right.
see where mixed messages
Right.
are getting.
well, but, okay, so just to be clear, what we had said was that we were going to try and bring in a CPA firm to do any kind of re-verification cleanup of FY21 accounts, which is, I think, what he's talking about, right? He's looking for those
Yeah, he's looking.
balances for
Balances.
his various funds that Concom manages, right?
Okay, so we're waiting.
We'll hear more about that in terms of the availability of that person, I think, at this point. Yeah.
So how many subcommittees out there have their own treasurers? How many other committees are in the same boat?
I know
or
planning
making the
board
same
is as
request.
well.
Conservation, planning, zoning,
Yeah,
probably
almoners.
4 or 5.
So I would,
4 or
I would,
5.
I would say
Yeah.
that we probably should send a communication to all those applied, saying that we have charged the town accountant for 22 forward, not 21, and we will provide guidance at a future date, hopefully soon, on who their point of contact is going to be.
Okay.
So to Joy's point, to not
Not
to,
have multiple emails going back and forth. Okay.
and
that's
also to
fine.
give Bradley and Ellen clear direction.
Sure. Give them a brief
Yeah.
brief
That's a good idea.
breathing room to get started with FY '22 as well. Okay, we can certainly do that to the various committees and boards that have people that have, or have accounts on our books here.
I can take care of that.
That's true.
Thank
Good point.
you.
Yep. Back on the conservation agent, that's one that I know we had shared at one point in time with Easthampton. I think it started for a year and then kind of didn't go beyond that for a variety of, I'm assuming, funding issues. And that's something I assume that once we get into budget season, COMCOM will bring forward again for our consideration. And I think in terms of the updates on web pages, that's something I know the tech committee has talked about. Once we get going on trying to figure out how we can do some new design work on the web page and make it more accessible, I think the goal would be to try and have the heads of various departments have access to their own page to update things, rather than having to go, they'd have limited control in terms of what they could do to update maybe.
The website would have to be converted to another form, but yes, that is one of the things that I think is extremely important about changing that website over to
Right.
a different form, is some of the new technology that is out there will allow, whether it's departments or boards and committees, to change some of those fields on their own.
Instead of having it all centralized. So I think too, as we talk about, when we get into our cost efficiencies committee, et cetera, that would be a perfect topic to talk about how we can look at those kinds of things that may or may not have such a financial impact, but it's definitely got a workload impact and efficiency and productivity aspect to it. So in terms of contracts, the last I had heard was that they were still dealing with the contractor and the environmental, I'm blanking her name, the environmental person anyway, to come up with some clarity about what had to be reworked in terms of
Or
one of
the
the
scope
trail
of work.
designs.
Correct.
And that still hasn't finalized so that they can actually get you information to sign a contract yet.
Not as of today, so I don't know how far along they are in that process.
Joy, do you have any other information on that at all?
No, in regards to the contracts, no.
Yeah, no, in terms of what's happened, whether the contractor and I think it's,
Stockman Associates.
yeah, okay. No, it's Kane, isn't it? Or,
Well, the vendor is Kane, the environmental
okay, so the
person
two
or
of them are
company is
supposed to
Stockman
be
Associates.
working it out and then getting to you so that the contract can be signed. So I guess if there's anything else we can do, I mean, we've kind of left it in Concom's hands to try and get the parties together to do this.
I'll follow up with them.
But, and then on the second part, this was the second Mass Trails grant was related to the bridge. And that, I believe, we haven't even gotten that out to bid or anything yet, right? That's got to be a process to do, right?
No, and their portion of funding under the Mass Trails is different from our portion. Theirs comes directly from federal dollars, so actually, they didn't even get their award papers or contracts till probably about a month, at least, after ours. They've got them now, and actually Marla sent them to me today, and we're going to try to get those filled in and signed tomorrow so they can go back to the state and the contract be issued, and then Concom can move forward on doing a bid for the bridge replacement.
Okay, great, okay. All right, well, those seem like the highlighted issues. Any questions from anybody else here from what you've read, heard?
I just have one question. Is the conservation agent, is that something that the town could get a grant for? I know that's more of a short-term kind of
The-
solution.
The problem with that, I mean, maybe, but the problem is it's usually only good for like a year. And you've already, set up expectations, you've got recurring costs, and that's usually what our challenge is. That, you might get some relief for a little bit to, to get ahead of the game and get some work done, but in the long run, you're not necessarily solving the problem because you've still got to be looking at budgeting and recurring costs. So in some cases, when you have a grant, you can build, some level of supervision or admin kind of that into the grant, but that doesn't quite match what a conservation agent's duties really are, I think.
No, I know.
Yeah, so it's a lot more complicated than that.
I just
so.
really would like to get some kind of long-term
I
plan.
know, I agree.
of our
Well, and
town really
again,
needs it.
I mean, it may be worth exploring again as we get into our cost efficiencies alternatives committee,
Absolutely.
because we had this joint person with Easthampton, and it lasted for a while, and then it went away. So however, whether it's with Easthampton or somebody else, I don't know if they'd be willing to do that again, but at least to explore options and find out other communities that would be maybe in a similar situation, and maybe we can find a way to share somebody, or at least get somebody on for X amount of hours per week or per month, if nothing else. That would be something, I'm hoping. But yeah, so I'm sure it'll come up at budget time in another month or two. I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about it. All right, good. Well, thanks on that for Concom. We will corral them next time to be here in person. Somebody. We do have, however, the next person, Cindy, for the Open Space Committee, please.
I'm also going to take my mask down. I think better when I can talk. So Cindy Palmer, 71 Glendale Road, and I'm the chairperson of the Open Space Committee, which is a committee of appointees as well, except for one at-large member. And the appointees include somebody from Planning Board, somebody from Assessors, somebody from CPC, somebody from Select Board. Let's see, I know I'm missing people on that. Parks and Conservation Commission. It's a very vibrant committee, but having said that, when people come from other committees, they're busy. They're busy and they have other responsibilities, and need I tell you, we're all volunteers. We work together, we collaborate with other boards and committees and groups, and develop programs and participate in activities to achieve the mission designated by the Select Board in 2020. And I included in your packet a copy of the mission, especially for people who are new, just so you understand that it was, I should say, the charge, which includes the mission. We also take into consideration, excuse me, our master plan and the update of our master plan, which the prioritization of it, as well as our open space and recreation plan. And within that, within the open space and recreation plan, which is now the 2020 to 2027 one, Chapter 5 talks about the conservation and the lands of conservation and recreation interest, and identifies criteria to identify these lands, and it focuses on within that criteria. Open Space Committee has begun to develop kind of a ever-changing and growing document of lands that fall into those criteria. Now, we are very sensitive to landowners. We're not publicizing anything and saying, we're looking for so-and-so's land, because we respect landowners and their rights, and the fact that some people have different kinds of plans for their properties, and that's the way it should be. But some people are very interested in conservation and very interested in long-term planning, whether they want to continue to own the land themselves or that they might be looking for other ways to see long-term conservation. And there's a variety of ways, and I'm just learning a lot of those myself. So what have we done? And I said in the last 2+ years, because actually this was an ad hoc committee prior to becoming a committee of the Select Board. And we have continued to develop that inventory of lands. At one point, we looked back at old Select Board minutes and also Conservation Commission minutes, and we realized that periodically landowners have come forward and said, I need to figure out something I can do for my land, and they didn't really have any place to go. They just brought forth their thoughts and ideas, and sometimes it just kind of went nowhere. But we're trying to move forward on that. We've also developed a series of programs and hikes for landowners and residents, which was supported most recently by a neighborhood outreach grant, and those events took place early in this year. Now, we had the challenges of the whole thing had to be completed and the reports had to be in before the end of May, and we had COVID, and therefore we couldn't do things inside, and it was still pretty successful, but Conant Park turned out to be very cold on the days that we held some of the programs, like windy, like blowing. I have provided to you the mailer that was sent to all households. I realize some of the mailers look similar, but Chris maybe, no, that's the other one right there. Yep, that was the mailer that was sent in. And this was sent to all households. Now, it was sent using the indicia of the printer. And I discovered that not everybody got it on time. Some people got it weeks and weeks and weeks late. But nonetheless, we got a lot of good press out of having that mailer go out to all households. And I do say this was a volunteer who's highly talented and gave her time to the development of that, and also did it gratis for us. The printing cost money, and that was supported by the Neighborhood Outreach Grant. We also continue to follow up with landowners with questions that came up at those meetings and other people that didn't necessarily have the opportunity to attend. We collaborate with the Conservation Commission, the Park Commission, Water Commission, and the Friends of Southampton Open Space, which is a newly formed 501c3 organization, to build interest and educate on topics of land conservation and care of our town properties. And I heard in the report from the Conservation Commission that ongoing care of the properties is, we know we have good people in this town that really want to help. Some of it is a case of management and kind of coordination, and actually tomorrow evening there's going to be a little meeting at Conant Park that's just going to sort of be a brainstorming opportunity for people, and how can we do this? Some of our properties have a great deal of invasive species on them, and others don't, and some of our other properties need some other things. So we collaborate to try to be supportive in any of that. We also participated in 2021 Celebrate Southampton event. At this point, would you pick up the other little thing? I think Joy's looking at it right now. Nope. The one Joy's looking on. And this was something that was available at the Celebrate Southampton event, but I'm not sure we had enough people visiting the booth. But as you can see on that, it talks about all three, Open Space Committee, Conservation Commission, and Friends of Southampton Open Space. And this too was developed by a volunteer, same volunteer, to help. And so I've left some of those in the town hall. And I know people are listening from home, and if anybody has questions about it, about how the three committees can work together and collaborate, please let me know, because that's going to be the success of us anyway. And there is there are some of these here in the town hall. Finally, we worked with PVPC and the water commissioners, and it was supported by CPC funding to create a mailer regarding the protection of the Barnes Aquifer. And that is the last one you're holding up, Chris, which has got a map of the Barnes Aquifer on one side. It was a mailer, so there is a mail section on that where the address goes. But it also talks about good practices, and that went to every household as well. I hope it stayed in the household. We sort of envisioned that it would be attached to a refrigerator with a magnet or something. And I hope it got utilized for that purpose. Currently, we are kind of excited. We're hopeful that we're going to be able to work more intensely with Kestrel Land Trust. And I've spoken to their executive director and their conservation director. And we look forward to the possibility of a large grant that Kestrel would help us with, something called a landscape partnership grant. And that, there's a lot of moving parts to that. We're volunteers. This was not my background professionally, but I'm energized by the good people that we work on with this. But I'm going to need some assistance from somebody like Kestrel to have some of these things happen. We'll continue to support strong relationships with our landowners in town. Again, reminding people, we're not telling people they have to do something specific with their land that they maybe didn't have on their plans, but some people are interested in protecting their legacy. And also educate everybody in town on the benefits of a combination of factors, including conservation, pollinator, and helping with pollinator and monarch-friendly plantings, trail maintenance, and broad conservation topics, which we read about in the news often, and continue to strategize around achieving our mission. We don't have a budget. We have nothing. I know there was something in the override, a modest amount of money for Open Space Committee. Heretofore, everything was either paid for by a grant or volunteers put money forth to buy coffee for those events, or to pay for the postage for those events, and bring snacks to those events. It's still, we have no budget. Maybe in the future we'll get one. We also have no personnel. Everybody's volunteers. And plans going forward for the next 4 to 6 months. Again, I mentioned that we have a tentative appointment to tour the town with the Kestrel's executive director, and to have her understand what a very beautiful and rich town we have in terms of our properties. Follow up with certain landowners, and I've got names of people. We've met with a few. I've helped to connect people with who might be considering conservation restrictions on their lands with others who have already gone through the process. We are hopefully completing plans to support a pollinator garden and education around that, and also maybe we'll look forward to another neighborhood outreach grant for the beginning of next year. Long term, what can the select board do to help us? Well, you know, you do help us. You're a very pro-select board, and I know some of you, and I don't know you, Mr. Lembra, but if you have any questions, I'm here. We do need to collaborate on these things. We need to keep people educated. We need to keep it alive. And there's been articles in the Reminder, and there's been various things. And, you know, we're not alone. There's other towns around here that are doing really wonderful conservation projects. And why not Southampton? Because we're a pretty fortunate town. I think that's my report.
Great.
Questions for me?
Very, very busy committee, for sure. Yeah, questions, anybody?
I don't have any questions.
No? Yeah, Francie?
Yeah, I just want to say that, you know, any collaboration with the Kestrel Land Trust would be something that I find highly desirable, because any of the properties that I've been on, or trails that, you know, that they were either responsible for or assisted in developing, are excellent, and it would go a long way to, I think, bring more recreation to the town. You know, I just see models of hiking trails.
There's another point to make about that, Francine, and that's that Kestrel, they're professionals. They know what grants are out there. I know we've got people in our town that look all the time for grant opportunities, but guess what? We were told about one the other day, which I'm really interested in finding out more about, and it has to do with if a landowner really liked the idea of using all-terrain vehicles on their property, and that was important to them, and they wanted it open for that use. There's actually a grant that could be designated an ATV property, so I'm trying to find out more about that. You know, so there's a variety, and you know, this whole concept of a dog park, maybe that might be something that we might be thinking about in the future, and maybe these aren't things that would necessarily appeal to me. I don't have a dog, but I have neighbors with beautiful dogs. I try hard to be friendly to local dogs, but the point is, we have to develop these kinds of relationships. And maybe it's not just Kestrel either. Maybe there are other organizations like Audubon and like Nature Conservancy that why not? We are really, do I sound excited about Southampton? Because it's here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
Other questions?
Great city. No, there's been a lot going on, and I know you guys have put a lot of effort and energy in all these. I mean, these brochures have just been so professionally done. I mean, this is just classy work, and you know, kudos to not only the committee, but all the volunteers that helped put this together and design this. I mean, I can't even imagine what this might have cost if you had to pay for it. So it's really a beautiful document, as well as this one too. So thanks for all the efforts, and I hope things keep on moving, and especially the Friends get energized as well and work collaboratively with you guys as well.
Cindy, what time is the meeting tomorrow?
It's 6 o'clock at Common Park, and people are welcome to come, but it's a brainstorming kind of meeting. Please come.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Anything else? All right. Great. Well, thanks, everybody, for those update reports. It's really very good to hear what's going on and hear the sort of the scope of everything. You know, sometimes when we all attend your various meetings as liaisons, we come back and we give the highlights. We give the 3 or 4 bullet point sentences of something that was acted on at that time, but it doesn't really give us the full picture. And I think that's part of the reason why we wanted to reinstitute this notion of having boards and commission and committee reports, because we wanted to really, better understand how everybody's working in town and what we can do to support you. And even though some of the questions that we put out here don't necessarily apply to some of these committees in terms of staffing per se, but how we could help support you and help you do your work better as well. I think we're trying to keep the channels of communication open and trying to have a dialogue and be sure that we're all kind of working on the same path, same direction, same goals, I hope. So thanks, everybody, for all your time and effort. And again, thanks to all the volunteers, not only the ones that are represented through the committees tonight, but the hundreds of volunteers that we do have in town, because there are many more than we probably even realize. So, great. Well, thank you very much. With that, we're going to go on to just a couple things. We have one resignation tonight. This is from the Conservation Commission, excuse myself. And this is from Dan LaValle, and I'll just read it out. Dear Select Board, Town Clerk, and Conservation Commission Chair, after deep thought and reflection, I've decided to resign my seat on the Conservation Commission as a voting member. The reasoning behind my decision is to allow someone with more advanced knowledge in the area of environmental science to join the commission and have a voting seat. While I have learned a great deal during my time, I would like to change to an associate member where I can focus on specific projects such as trail maintenance, etc. Perhaps in the future, when I have built a stronger knowledge base, I would rejoin again as a voting member, but for now, I feel this is the best choice for the town and myself. Very respectfully, Dan LaValle, 17 Glendale Road. So Dan has been a force of nature in some ways in terms of not only involvement with Concom, but many other committees in town, and I'm sure he's feeling a little bit overloaded and stretched. So unfortunately, we have a motion, or we have a request before us to approve his resignation, so I'll take a motion.
So move.
All right, could I have a second, please?
I will second it.
All right, any thoughts? If not, we'll just go right on to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
I do want to say, though, thank you to Dan. He was absolutely instrumental in pursuing the Wetlands Bylaw Act and getting that passed through town, and he's one of the most enthusiastic volunteers in this town that we have. So we are very lucky to have him on any of our boards, and I know that he will stay as a volunteer for Conservation Commission and
He'll stay
working on the
engaged,
trails.
yeah. And it's my understanding that through the MACC, the Massachusetts Conservation Commission, unlike many of the other committees and boards around, MAC has the ability to have an associate member,
Yes.
which is still a member, they just cannot be a voting member. So that is what Dan's requesting, and I assume that'll be taken up within Concom itself.
Yes.
So, very good. All right, thank you much. Okay, let's move on to a few reports. We've got the town administrator report. Ed, you want to give us a few highlights of what's been going on?
Sure. First off, we have been notified from the state that our work and application to become an MVP community was reviewed, and the town of Southampton is now designated as a municipal vulnerability planning community, MVP community, so that is now official. The annual test of our town hall fire suppression system and the sensors was conducted this past Friday, October 8th. Everything except one fire alarm in the basement, which is connected to the dry system, tested out satisfactorily. The vendor will be returning the check on the fire sensor, which didn't operate automatically, but was able to be triggered manually to diagnose and repair that unit. The street and road updates for this construction season are still continuing. County Road North is currently receiving a paved level overlay by the vendor and will also have its lines repainted. Hillside Meadow will also be receiving a paved overlay in the weeks ahead. These road updates are being done through the use of our Chapter 90 funding from the state. And just a reminder that the assessor's office will be open on Mondays from 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., Tuesdays from 9 a.m. to noon, and also on Wednesdays from 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. while they are looking to fill a full-time principal assessor vacancy. The temporary part-time principal assessor, David Zagorski, has started working in the office. And then upcoming select board meetings, October 26th, and select board meetings for November to be determined.
Okay, thanks. Any questions of Ed? I just have one. With the MVP Planning Committee, does that mean that we're now eligible to apply for the MVP Action Grant? Is my understanding?
That and any of the grants that we actually receive bonus points for being a municipal vulnerability preparedness community, we can check those boxes.
Okay, great. And at some point, if we could find, whatever the final report is that everybody worked on, the committee that worked on it, and just have that posted on our website too, on the,
Sure.
where the appropriate page is to post it. The front page is getting a little crowded there, the web,
Yeah.
the home page, but someplace to have that report available so everybody could take a look and see what that what that included, what it involved. Good.
Certainly.
That'd be great. All right, anything else? All right, if not, let's quickly go through a few select board reports. I don't know that we have too many. John, you want to start with anything?
No, I had 2 weeks with no meetings.
Wow, all right, well, I guess I chose the right person, okay. Let's go, Francine, have anything?
Oh, okay. The bylaw committee met on September 29th and conducted a preliminary review of the September 21st public meeting and is considering the comments it received for inclusion in its final draft of the 3 bylaws that were discussed at that meeting. The summary of the meeting will be reviewed at tomorrow's bylaw committee meeting so that the results of that will be posted on the town website as documentation of those proceedings and available to everyone in the community. The committee reviewed and updated its progress chart and prioritized the next set of bylaws for review and revision, and I won't go through that list right now, but we have our work cut out for us, as guaranteed there. And just to let you know that our next meeting is tomorrow at 11 a.m., October 13th, right here in this room. The PVPC, Human Resource Regional Feasibility Group also met on September 29th to respond to the final draft of an RFQ that it will issue to select a consultant to conduct the Human Resources Needs Survey of participating towns. It is expected that the project will continue into the next calendar year. It was originally scheduled to be concluded by the end of December, and it's just a little behind schedule, so fortunately, they can extend it into the next calendar year. And then the Board of Health met on October 4th. It signed an agreement with Ty and Bond for the groundwater monitoring and report of the closed landfill at the transfer station. This report is, an annual report is required by the Department of Environmental Protection. It was reported that at Norris School, lunch and bus seats are assigned as a means of precaution to limit the potential exposure to COVID for students. A few contact tracings have been conducted at the school. There's been close communication between the contact tracer and school nurses. The Board of Health will get the word out regarding the availability of booster shots when that information is available and the locations. They're thinking of ways to spread the word to individuals who are less likely to use technology as a communication tool. And then according to the state's September 30th COVID report, Southampton had 16 active COVID cases. And to report some good news, Southampton is a low risk for West Nile and EEE viruses. And good news for the kids in the school, there will be a trunk or treat program at Norris School parking lot so that the kids can celebrate Halloween this year. And the next meeting of the Board of Health is scheduled for November 1st. And finally, the Norris School Committee will be meeting again tomorrow, so I'll report that at our next meeting. Thank you.
Very good. Okay. All right. Joy?
So Conservation Commission met October 4th. Was it October 4th? Yes. What was that? The holiday. No, this week was the holiday. I apologize. They met October 4th. And I think we pretty much went over everything in the Conservation Commission report, besides they are now looking for a new member. So please apply if you are interested, and they are always looking for volunteers as well to help on the trails. Their next meeting is October 18th via Zoom at 6 p.m. That information is located on mytowngovernment.org. Planning Board met on October 6th. They went over mostly the bylaws and reviewing the new bylaws. I think they're on section 7 in regards to driveways. Something very interesting that I think the Select Board should be aware is our new consultant is Mr. Richard Harris. He's excellent, and he went over kind of just in general the difference between zoning bylaws and general bylaws, and how the town may want to look at some of the zoning bylaws, determine what actions people can take on their property. And we want to change that to a general bylaw rather than a zoning bylaw, because there are nonprofits and religious organizations that are exempt from zoning bylaws. So we need to consider that when we are looking at our zoning bylaws and our general bylaws. I thought that was very helpful to keep in mind. So that's something that we're going to go back and review for the planning board. And their next meeting is October 20th at 7 p.m. So we might be doing some more work with the bylaw committee and communicating with them. Housing Authority was scheduled the same day as Conservation Commission, so I was couldn't be in two places at once. I was unable to make it to that meeting. My understanding, though, is that they went over the community meeting, and they're planning for the next one in November sometime soon. Their next meeting is October 28th at 6 p.m. And then, as you heard from Cindy Palmer, the open space and what they're up to. I don't believe there is a next meeting on the books for open space, but there is the Friends of Open Space meeting tomorrow at Cornwall Park at 6 p.m.
Great. Okay, good. So Rini can't be here tonight. She's out of town, but she asked that we fill in her report. So let me just find that.
You want me to do it?
We can. CPC, we've covered basically through Virginia, I think pretty much, was the same information. Council on Aging is probably where you could start. If you want to do that.
Council on Aging met October 6th. The committee congratulated Joan Lenahan on receiving her official certification from the Massachusetts Association of Councils on Aging and Senior Center Directors. Received grant from HVES for a series of memory cafes. Congrats. First cafe is scheduled for October 21st, 10 to 12 at the Senior Center. Darlene Motika has resigned her position as administrative assistant. Many thanks to Darlene for her dedicated service to the Senior Center and our community seniors. The COA is reviewing job responsibilities and needs of this position. Mr. David Parsons, a longtime Southampton resident and friend of the Senior Center, left funds in his will for a donation to the COA Senior Center, specific to the design and construction of a senior center. This is a specific request with a deadline of 2 years to initiate this project. If not initiated within 2 years, funds will be dispersed according to his will, with the COA Senior Center being one of the several beneficiaries. A subcommittee is forming to discuss and develop plans, including me, which would be Rini. CARES Act update, discussion on additional needs, use of funds. Explained and discussed the new committee, Cost Efficiency Ad Hoc Committee, initiated by the Select Board, encourage members to consider joining the committee, deadline giving of 10/12 to put their name in. Next meeting, November 3rd. Board of Assessors met 10/5, executive session only for a hearing and discussion of exemptions. Discussing evaluation and completing business of the office. New interim principal assessor has started. Next Board of Assessor meeting Tuesday, October 19th at 4:30 PM. Public Safety Building Committee meeting planned for October 25th at 4 PM.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right, and then from my part, basically, a master plan implementation committee? Yes, I'm sorry, yes. Yes, please.
Jessica McConnell, 24 High Street. Could I just
Sorry, can you hear-
ask Ed a question?
Can I repeat your name again? I didn't hear.
Jessica McConnell,
Okay. thank you.
24 High Street.
Mhm.
Do I have to do that, or is that just town meeting?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's select board meetings, yes.
thank you. Ed, you had caught the letter about the subcommittee, about going over ways to make the town more efficient, save money, et cetera. Are
Right.
those going to be open meetings with will the public be able to attend those?
Yes,
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. And they'll be posted like regular meetings?
they should be, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so just a couple brief ones for me. The Master Plan Implementation Committee is going to meet on October 13th at 7 o'clock. And then the main thing we've been working on, I'll tie the Grants Committee in together. The Grants Committee and the Tech Committee have been working together on a grant application for the Community Compact IT grant. I think we mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. The main topic is going to be cybersecurity, so improving our systems here at Town Hall. We've had a vulnerability assessment done, not a deep dive, but an overview of what are some of the basic things that need improving in terms of our security cyber-wise here at town to protect us from information theft and ransomware and all those kinds of things that we hear about in the news all the time. And so we'll be applying for a grant, and the Tech Committee has actually done the bulk of the work already. They have done all the research and put the budget together, and has just basically turned it over to the Grant Committee for a final look-through, and between Ed and myself, we'll be working on submitting that grant application tomorrow. It's going to be for about $75,000, so that's what we have as our next agenda item, to hopefully get some money for that purpose, okay? So with that, I think that's the end of our grant and general reports. What I would like to suggest, since I see so many folks here from the library, I would like to make a suggestion that we change our order of business a little bit. We had them on tentatively at 7. We're running a little bit late. But would anybody mind if we moved up the library trustees discussion first before we went back to old business? Is that okay with
Absolutely
everybody?
not, that's fine.
All right. So with that in mind, we will entertain whomever would like to speak on behalf of the library trustees.
I would be happy to.
Good. And just introduce yourself and,
Okay,
And if they have a quorum here, they should call their meeting to
yeah,
order.
do we have a quorum? I don't know. Do you have a quorum?
we do, yep.
Okay, then you should probably call your meeting to order then.
Okay, so Jessica Huffnagel, 74 Moosebrook Road, and we'll call the, how do I say this, the Library Trustees Joint Meeting to order? Okay, and it's just going to take me a moment to hopefully bring this up. Oh, look at that. It's magic. Okay.
Very good.
All right, so in your packets, you should have a handout that says Mind the Gap at the top, and just because I distrust technology a little bit, you also have a printout of the slides, just in case anything went wrong. So it's just a repeat of what you see up there. So as I mentioned, I'm Jessica Huffnagel. I am the chair for the Board of Trustees at Edwards Library, and the trustees have asked me to talk to you about the gap. This is the shorthand term the trustees have coined to explain the difference between the funding level that the state requires by law and the amount that a municipality actually appropriates for its library. So Southampton's gap right now is $9,897 for fiscal year '22. To address that, we are asking the Select Board to submit an article for the next town meeting, which would authorize the Select Board to transfer an additional $9,897 to Edwards Library in order that Edwards can comply with the funding requirements of Massachusetts general law and thereby enable Edwards Library to maintain its state certification. In other words, to keep us from falling into that gap. So I'm going to pause there to see would you prefer that I take my mask off? Is the microphone picking me up okay?
I can hear you. Okay.
Everybody good? Okay.
I think we can hear okay.
So just a couple of, there we go. There are a couple of terms that are critical to understanding the gap. So first, Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 78, Section 19A, provides that the state will determine the minimum amount at which a municipality such as Southampton must budget each year for its library. Failure to appropriate that mandated amount could result in the library losing its certification. The amount that the state determines is called the Municipal Appropriation Requirement, or the MAR, which is how we refer to it. So, under the law, a library that is appropriated less than the MAR can lose its certification unless it can obtain a waiver from the state. The gap is the difference between the MAR as calculated by the state and the amount of money the town actually grants the library through the budget process. So if the budget amount is less than the MAR, Edwards Library is in peril of losing its certification unless it can obtain a waiver from the state, which comes with its own set of challenges. So I want to walk you through a little bit of that. So forgive me for this next slide. There are a lot of numbers there, but I wanted you to kind of see a layout of how the MAR is calculated. So each year, the MAR is calculated based on the average of the preceding 3 years' MARs. The average is then increased by 2.5%. So it's important to note that because the MAR is a function of the average of the previous 3 years, the MAR increase in the subsequent year is almost always less than 2.5% from the preceding year, usually just a little bit over 1%. So if Edwards is funded at the MAR every year, its budget request for the next year will call for a relatively modest increase to stay on that track. As I mentioned before, we do have the option to apply for a waiver if the MAR is not met, but it's not guaranteed, it's not a gift, it comes with its own set of challenges. Mass General Law states that such a waiver may only be granted in a given fiscal year to not more than 10 cities and towns in the Commonwealth. Thus, there is no guarantee that Edwards will be granted a waiver. Last year, we did apply for and were granted a waiver due to pandemic conditions. We hope not to repeatedly depend on that kind of an emergency fix. And I do want to mention that last year, a lot of exceptions were made. The process was made a little bit easier given that so many towns were in that predicament. So each year that the MAR is not budgeted, Edwards faces a significant challenge to its ability to continue to serve the people of Southampton. And that's why we want it to address. There's no guarantee that the Commonwealth will grant a waiver, and a good chance that a waiver will not be granted in successive years. So once you get it once, it gets harder to get, and that gap gets a little bit bigger. It's also a lot more than just a financial or a budget situation. So the most immediate impact of losing state certification is that Edwards would not be eligible for state aid to public libraries. In FY21, that was $10,522. And it is the money that we get in state aid that provides us with the ability to pay our annual membership fee of $8,651 to Central and Western Massachusetts Resource Sharing, CWMARS, which is the 501c nonprofit corporation that allows Edwards to participate in all the statewide interlibrary programs that our community enjoys. This is what lets you download books that other libraries own or get an interlibrary loan. So it's a really important service, especially to small towns like Southampton. So it's important that before we talk about kind of the consequences of that certification, that we're also looking at some of the services that the library has provided. So this data is based on FY 2019. FY 2020 was not a typical year because of the COVID restrictions, so we wanted to give you a little bit better numbers to look at. So according to the Census Bureau, the population of Southampton in 2019 was 6,171. Our records show that in FY 2019, there were 1,976 residents who had library cards. That alone means that about 32% of our residents used Edwards Library. The actual number is likely to be higher, as frequently a single library card is used by more than one person in a household. For example, in my household, my kids check out books on my card. So Edwards Library on its own and through its membership in CW Mars meets all tastes and preferences. In FY 2020, Edwards circulated 32,311 books, 2,582 print periodicals, 3,001 audiobooks, 19,912 downloadable items, so that's ebooks, that's online audiobooks, it's online magazines, and 11,447 videos. And our public computers were used over 1,900 times. The total circulation of all materials in FY 2019 was 55,805. And in addition, in FY 19, Edwards Library hosted 143 adult programs that were attended by a total of 1,200 people. It hosted 7 young adult programs, not problems, maybe some of those, and 70 children's programs serving over 1,900 attendees. So it is essential that children learn to love to read, because throughout our lives, after we learn how to read, we read to learn, and that is not limited to books. As you may know, the Norris Library has been closed. I'm sure everyone in this room is aware of that. The Edwards Public Library is now our town's access to those services. Edwards Library is a money saver and makes books available to people at all income levels. So we actually got a really interesting number from, it's up there and in your handout. According to CW Mars, our library patrons in Southampton saved over $1 million in FY 2019, just based on the number of books and materials that were checked out. That's not even including the things that were downloaded. So, returning to the question of what would happen if Edwards Library were to lose its certification. First, if Edwards is funded below the MAR level and not able to secure a waiver, it will not be certified to receive state aid to public libraries, which in FY 21 was just over $10,000. It brings us back to minding the gap, that is, avoiding falling behind with regard to municipal appropriation requirements, which we have come to know as the MAR. It is important to bear in mind, what is important to bear in mind is that the MAR is based on the average MAR for the preceding 3 years. It is not based on what the town actually appropriated. It is based on what the town was required to appropriate in accordance with Mass General Law. So with regard to the budget, the amount the municipality appropriates for the year after a waiver was granted must equal the MAR. That is the average of the MAR for the preceding 3 years, not the average of what was actually appropriated. It's not a matter of just dollars. It's also a matter of maintaining certification. So the library derives revenues from other sources, including contributions from our Friends Committee and state grants, but the MAR is the amount the municipality must fund in its budget. So we bring that up because a local philanthropist has volunteered to contribute the full amount of the MAR deficit, but that generosity cannot be counted as an offset for the MAR. The MAR must come from the municipality. Nor are we allowed to apply towards our MAR requirements the more than $20,000 a year that is raised by our volunteers' donations, local businesses, the Friends of Edwards Library, the Mothers Club, and other supporters. That money goes to pay for adult and children's programs, conferences, book carts, shelving, Wi-Fi, museum passes, and other essential needs for our day-to-day operations. So I hope we have explained why the Edwards Library needs the town's support and why it is essential to our continued viability to mind the gap. The trustees of Edwards Library thank you for allowing us to appeal to you to authorize a warrant that will give the residents of Southampton the opportunity to vote at town meeting on whether they want to fully fund Edwards Library at the minimum level required by the Commonwealth, so that our library's certification will not be in jeopardy. I hope you share our conviction that Edwards is a crown jewel of Southampton's educational and cultural heritage. All we ask is that Edwards Library will be able to continue to provide the people of Southampton with all the wonderful and vital services that we have discussed tonight. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jessica. Appreciate it. Great. Is there anybody else from the trustees who would like to speak before we entertain some questions? Or if not, we can move to a few questions. You can all determine who wants to answer. Who would like to ask a question or two? I know I have a couple, but John?
I can go first. I just, maybe one, but maybe a couple clarifying questions. Can you tell me who prepares the TAMI, the total appropriated municipal income, for and certifies it?
Who prepares the TAMI?
That's what the town
Well, your document says,
Come on up to the mic, please.
The municipal appropriation requirement is the formula you saw that's set by the Mass Board of Library Commissioners. The TAMI is what the town appropriates. It's that's what it stands for. It's the town appropriation. What the town has appropriated.
It's town, not total. Total appropriated
No, it's
municipal
the
income?
town, I forget what, it breaks down to, but it's what the town votes at the annual meeting to give the library in its budget.
Right, so I guess specifically I'm going to MU 12, where it says, enter your fiscal year 2022 projected total appropriated municipal income, TAMI, as reported on the fiscal year 2022 financial report. So my question is,
You're
what
just,
is that financial report?
but you're just questioning, is the word total or town?
Well, if there is a financial report, I'd like to see it, because I assume there's more details in it. And did the town accountant certify it? Is it done by the board of trustees?
It was voted on at the select board meeting when the budget was prepared, wasn't it?
But a financial report, what this is referring to is,
The financial report's what I fill out, what the director fills out for
Okay.
the Mass Board of Library Commissioners. I just handed mine in. There's 2 state reports. The ARIS is the statistics, which you saw, and the financial report is a money report. How much did we spend on books?
Yep.
How much did we spend on utilities?
Right.
Everything you could possibly imagine we spent on is in that.
Gotcha. So it's a report that you fill out annually as the director of
Yes.
the library? And then
Yes.
you certify it?
Well,
And send it to the
Jessica signs it, the chair, I sign it. It's sent to the Mass Board of Library Commissioners along with the copy of the budget that the town voted on. And let's see, I think that's mostly what it is. Yeah, and this actually comes from that report.
Right. Is it possible to get the last 2 years of that?
Oh, I have them in the office.
I can swing by and pick them up.
Yeah, I'd have to
we can,
copy it
let's
for you.
put them over to Ed, and he can circulate them to everybody.
Okay, so
on
I'd
the
have to
select board.
copy it. I printed it out, so I can make you a copy for the last 2 years. Sure.
Yep.
That'd be great.
Perfect.
Very good. Great, then we can all see what the difference is here. So you did apply for a waiver, if I'm understanding, and got the waiver last year. And that was not terribly difficult, or I know you said that it was an easier process, perhaps?
Well, it wasn't, the waiver process was no different, but because of the pandemic, over, I think about 50 libraries received a waiver. And because of the pandemic, usually they don't give that many, as Jessica said.
Right, and so, in your mind, you don't see any advantage or not an advantage, but you don't really want to go for a second year in a row for a waiver, is what I'm understanding.
Well, if we have to, but the problem is the gap. So every year you don't get your, requirement, it's much harder to get the requirement the next year, because the town would have to come up with even more.
And isn't there something that when they grant the waiver, they don't rub out the number that you should have achieved?
Right,
That gets
right.
added to subsequent years, so the rate you pay later for the benefit of the waiver in previous years, it does get rolled in.
Right, and there's a whole process. If you get too many waivers, they end up calling Ed and me and a bunch of other people into Boston, unless, of course, it's on Zoom. But there's a whole process, and that's why not very many libraries lose their certification. Hamden Convy was part of that one. I mean, you were aware then. Hamden was the last one I know of in Western Mass, and it was 15 to 20 years ago. And Wareham lost it, and it's taken them 4 years to get their certification back.
Wow. Okay, good to
So
know.
They do it on purpose, so towns will support the libraries.
Yeah, okay, good,
So you won't have all old books on the shelves.
right. Yeah, all right, go ahead, please.
Jessica McConnell, 24 High Street. I have a question regarding how the library got in this situation. Like Norris Elementary has a certain dollar amount that we have to fund, but once again, the state requires us to fund a certain amount. The library has the same kind of number. So if there is a requirement out there, how come that requirement managed to not be met? Because it seems like this would be like something when the budget is created is a known entity, and it's like, kind of like when you pay the health insurance, it's a dollar number you have to hit. So I'm just wondering how we got here and how we don't get here again.
That I'm not sure. I'll entertain that question, but again, I'd like this to be questions mostly from the select board. It's a presentation to us for consideration, but Jessica, if you can answer any of that, please. Any of it? Any idea? Or anybody? I mean, you got to come to the mic, please. Introduce yourself and come to the mic.
Yes, I'm Convi Stahl, 14 Jonathan Judd Circle. I think it began because the town was in dire needs of cutting budgets, and it tried to do it across the board as favorably as possible. When I watched the budget meeting, they looked for the money, but there wasn't the money there, and that was the problem. Now we're coming forth, now we're going to have, I'm going to use the term free cash. I know that may not be the exact term that you use. We're going to have this free cash, and then it now allows the town to say, oh, we have a little bit of extra money, let us go back, and those areas that we should have funded, at least minimally, now we can do that. And so that's why we're here. You know, if we can get if we get the $9,882 into our budget, we're going to get $10,000 back. And it also means that next year, our MAR is not going to be made higher because we had a waiver. And I think that's the point that we have to think about. We're just going to dig ourselves in a bigger hole and ask you for more money.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think that point was clear, too, between the two of you, because I just assumed, well, I was making a wrong assumption. You know, I wasn't assured of the impact of not having, you know, the waiver, what it meant to have that 2 years in a row, and what that might mean for a bigger amount of money that you had to deal with in the subsequent year. So, yeah, go ahead, Jess.
Oh, I just was,
Yeah.
if you
Yeah,
had any other
could you
questions.
go back to that slide that has all the numbers on it?
I think I can,
Or maybe not. but-
that big,
Yeah, that one.
one.
Okay, so I guess I was confused, and maybe you can just, when I looked at the 1, 2, 3, MU8, okay, so the middle line there, the 167, 681. So whichever is higher, the FY20, which is 166, 135,
Yeah,
right? Or the TAMI.
yes.
So in your calculations, I just want to be sure that if you're coming to us for money for the budget, that you're giving a correct, accurate number for yourselves so that you don't have a shortfall. Because when I looked at it, and maybe I'm just looking at it wrongly, my calculation came out a little bit less. But I was putting in the 163 plus 166 twice. Is that not how that's calculated? Because I came up with 9369 as my shortfall.
You would put in the 167.68, not the 166, 135 twice.
Right, but it says FY 2021, Tammy.
That was too low, you don't need it now. You put in the higher one.
Okay,
Chris,
But-
if I could take a stab at it?
but, okay, then just,
Higher number.
the MU8 though is,
Yeah.
but it's referring, I understand which is higher, I got that part
Yep.
on the MU8, but it's, in MU8, that definition is using the FY 2020 MAR, which isn't that the 166, 135 above, or am I not? That's not the MAR on the second line up there? So whichever's higher, the FY 2020 MAR or the TAMI.
On line MU5,
Which is 21.
which is 167,
That's a very,
681.
very convoluted way to say that in my brain. But anyway, okay, if you're comfortable with the figures, fine. I just want to be sure you don't cheat yourselves.
We actually didn't do this chart. This is from the Mass Board of Library Commissioners.
Okay, well,
If there's a mistake, we're in big trouble.
okay. All right, John, did you?
Well, no, that's what I was going to say. You take the first three numbers, add them up, and divide by 3 to get your average. And if that number
Yeah,
is higher
Yeah,
then the 21 will use that, yeah.
no, I got
Yes.
that. It's just, that what was confusing
Correct.
me is this FY *20 MAR in that, under the MU8 line. The instructions don't,
We debated even putting this up because it is so convoluted, but, we wanted to share
okay,
and
well, if
what
you're
we're working
comfortable
with.
with the 9897 as your bottom line figure that you need, I'll go with your
Mm-hmm.
figure. I'm not going to
So
suggest differently.
one of my other questions was the funding source for this. So I heard free cash, but I would anticipate that we're not going to have free cash certified for quite some time.
Certainly
So
not by
is
December.
there an alternative funding source, thinking that free cash will not be on the table until sometime in the late
Yeah.
spring, at
And
best case scenario?
and you've said you've got a benefactor, but that's not going to count because it's not a municipal.
It's municipal
line, right?
support, yeah.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no money available. No, no. That's not true. The alternative would be operational stabilization,
Okay.
which requires a 2/3 vote.
Could I ask that question since you
Yeah,
got the
go
mic?
ahead.
However, is it plausible that if there's an existing line item that was appropriate at a higher amount than is actually needed and had funds available in it, that we could do a transfer by town meeting?
It is, because actually one of the possible town meeting articles will be to transfer funds within the police department for that purpose.
Okay. Mhm. So there might
So
be
that would
something
prevent us having to go
Could be
stabilization.
something, right. And so, and again, just to reiterate, just so I'm hearing as part of the grants committee this time, wearing my hat, there's no saving grace really to get something as a grant from some library association, whatever, that is not going to count toward this problem.
No.
Okay.
We
Okay.
looked at that.
Talk to them.
Yeah.
I spoke with them as far as I was on the phone.
Come on up a little bit so people can hear you, please.
Hockey Stone. And I said, look, what if I could get Warren Buffett to donate money? And she said, you can ask all you want. It's not going to happen. It has to come from within your town. And
Yeah.
I said, I can't believe that. Why can't we just have him donate donate to the town, and then the town will just appropriate?
Yeah.
No, that is not the way it can be
Yeah.
done.
Okay.
Trust me. I
Yeah.
thought for sure we had this all taken care of, and they assured me
Yeah.
that I had it
Okay.
wrong.
All right. Well, that's clear. Okay.
We're happy here.
We've explored the options then. Okay, anybody have any other questions? I don't think at this point in time, I'm not going to recommend that we do much further discussion or any kind of, voting on this. I think this is a consideration that we'll have to discuss as we go along, but it's helpful to have the presentation tonight and understand, the predicament you're in and we're in as a town and the impact of that. So I think that's very helpful to have come and presented that to us tonight.
Yeah, and at which time it's appropriate, we'll draft,
Yeah,
you can draft an article for the special town meeting
Right.
for consideration
right.
for the warrant.
We're looking at having one, we'll be discussing that later tonight, but we're looking at having one before the end of the year. So, that, this is timely in that regard.
I just wonder, is there a deadline? Is there, that we should be aware of from
For
from
For
their
us.
end?
from your end, yeah, that was going to be another question. Yes.
The deadline is, we're already there, so we are applying for the waiver because we have to get that going, but it can be overturned. And actually, part of the waiver application says, are you working with your town to
Okay,
try to remedy this?
Yeah.
Did I? Yeah,
all right.
so it's passed, but we still have some time. Is there a hard deadline after that? Sorry, you just sat down.
Barbara Golden, Director. I did talk to the Mass Board of Library Commissioners, and if we get the money anytime, the waiver, the whole thing is dropped. But we do have to fill out the application.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And quite a few towns do this. That's what the advice was.
Kind of do things simultaneously, hoping that
Yeah.
one or the other will come through. Yeah, okay.
I have just
Yep,
one
any
last
que- yeah, go ahead.
question. So none of a donation doesn't count, and I can see why you don't want one, because then even on the next year, you still have to make up that difference. If there was, just to buy some time, a donation to cover the next 2 years, and then, so we can appropriate, no? Okay.
No,
All right,
it
yeah.
still would affect certification, and we would put the money to good use, I'm sure, but
Yeah,
it
no,
wouldn't,
just to
it wouldn't help
cover
with the
for just
certification.
if you did get a waiver for this year, and then hopefully it wouldn't be such a jump for the next year.
Yes, but
potentially.
it still creates that widening
That
gap
wide
for
gap,
the
okay.
town. Yeah.
It's just a
Thanks.
bigger gap. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, good. All right, if no other questions, we thank you very much for the
All right, thank
presentation. Very informative, gives us something to think about. There's definitely some new things that I did not know, so yes. Connie, you got something else you'd like to say?
Oh, I had one last question. Does the board have a liaison?
No, not to the Board of Trustees, no.
Yeah, I would volunteer just so that we can make sure that this is,
I think
Moving
a couple of us, Francine, I know sits in with them, but we don't have an official liaison.
oh, okay.
from the select
I
board.
just wanted to make sure, just
Yeah.
because I just want to make sure that this gets addressed.
Okay.
and-
Very good, yeah, Connie, please, yeah.
I'll just
Yeah, just come closer to the mic so we can hear you, that's all.
So for clarification, you're going to take our presentation under consideration. You will be making a decision within the next month or so?
We've got to, because we'll
For
be
warrants.
talking about what articles are going to be on the warrant. If we're going to have the special town meeting in maybe early December, we've got to be deciding pretty quickly what are going to be the warrant articles. And so we would come back to you, I'm sure via Ed, to talk about that in
And
more
would there
detail.
be any reason why you would not recommend this for town meeting? I mean, what would prevent you from doing that?
Personally, for me, not right now, no.
I can just speak for myself.
convinced,
I just
yeah.
want, I'm very familiar with net school spending, and that's what you were referencing
Yeah,
with the library calculation. Now I understand it's a rolling 3-year average
yeah,
with the percentage. I want to see the details behind it. I know that you can't put capital in there, and I just need to see the facts and figures behind it. And I think the other thing that's going on here, separate from you folks, is the fact that Norris has closed its library. Norris's library will be closed next year. And at the end of next year, if the funding that was cut this year isn't restored, all the ESSER money will be gone, and additional positions will be cut from the school. So that really leaves us, if you guys lose accreditation and the schools don't have accreditation, with the libraries open, there's no libraries left in town for a population of over, 700 kids. So that's an issue, plus the adults. But I think there might be options here down the road to explore things, maybe a collaboration
yeah.
between the schools in Edwards, and
Yes, and
Yeah.
we do
we
some of
Moving
that.
we can bring it up tomorrow night under new business.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
So-
Yeah, no, we'll definitely,
And I'm asking this because if it's going to go to town meeting, that we need to do some preparation
sure.
in getting information out to the townspeople. And so
Absolutely.
we would like at least a couple weeks' notice so
Yeah.
that we can prepare
Right.
the adequate
And-
publication.
And there will be assistance in writing the article.
For the warrant, yeah.
Yes, oh, yes,
Yeah,
please.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
okay.
exactly. Because usually any of the articles that we draft here, they end up going down to our legal counsel to review before they make it on the warrant
Yeah.
for a town meeting, so we'd be all clear on that as well. But given that our time is running short before the end of the year, and given possible town meeting dates with holidays intervening and the amount of lead time we need to be able to post a warrant for a special town meeting, we've got to make some decisions in the next 2 to 3 weeks for sure.
Okay, and so you'll be notifying us?
We'll get back
of-
in touch with you.
of that.
Yep,
All right, thank you
Okay.
very much.
thank you very much. Yes, and if you would, the reports that John was requesting, we can pass those around to Ed, and we'll get them circulated to us. Yeah.
This isn't the report he was asking, this is the detailed how it's calculated, step by step, so I don't know if that's
Oh, okay,
what you were.
all right. But I think you were looking for the last 2 or 3 years of the
Yeah.
financial report. So if you'd email that to Ed, and then we'll get it circulated. Oh, okay. Or just bring it over to Ed, and he'll deal with it.
Figure it out.
He'll deal with it.
You'll have to scan it, Barbara.
Okay, all right, very good. Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Would the library board of trustees like to adjourn their meeting?
That would probably be a good idea.
Yes.
All right, very good. Welcome. So thank you again for coming. All right. Great, so we'll get back quickly on our old business, the agenda. We'll get back on track here.
Now the room empties out. Now the room empties out.
Yeah. Great. Okay, very good. Okay, Ed, if you would like to jump in on old business and give us a little bit of an update on where we are with the audit.
We have a number of questions from the auditors that I am currently working on answering. I believe the treasurer has finished answering all of hers, so just trying to get through that and get them the responses that they need.
And your goal is to do that by what? By when?
I'd like to finish it up next week, so. It's just a question of if I can find all the information to digest it and respond to them.
Okay. Are these more unusual questions than we usually get, or are they sort of some of the same old stuff that an auditor would normally ask? Or are they looking for something?
It's usual questions. It's just, okay, going back and actually finding out why that is the way it is. And some of them are probably easy, and then other ones are going to take a little longer to actually do the research on it, back through 20.
Okay. All right. Any questions, thoughts? Okay. Moving on to the annual audit contract, I guess is the next bullet item on here.
So, is this referring to potentially going out to bid for another 3-year contract?
Yes, I think so.
So I'd like to suggest that we move forward with not holding the audit, and we go to town meeting, special town meeting, and request a leave from the bylaw for 1 year only, and reallocate those funds to paying somebody to come in and clean up the 21, so not to burden the current staff with it. How we do all that, I leave to the chair.
Now, you discussed that with the auditing firm. Has that been discussed with our attorneys to make sure that, between what the auditors say and what Massachusetts general law says are one and the same?
Right.
I've only discussed it as far as the public meeting here. I didn't go outside this
Yeah,
meeting.
okay.
Yeah, it would be our bylaws, not the Mass General laws.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, we haven't, I guess it ties into the notion of whether we're going to bring in somebody. We've identified a couple of possibilities, but we have had no luck in getting hold of them yet, right?
Actually, when I left Jessica at the podium before the meeting, Eric did get back to me. So his firm is very busy right now. He said that he probably would not be able to start on anything until sometime in November. He did say that he would check, and I'm going to still send him some more information on it just in case we follow up and decide to utilize them in November. But he's also going to check and see if there's anybody that he may recommend to us other than his own firm that may be able to help us out with this.
Now, was that the second reference from Francine, or was that the new
Yes.
lead that we got from the bank?
No, this is the one that Francine had found, this
Right.
Eric Kershaw.
And we've also got the information that Jen Day sent to us also.
And at this point, though, we don't have an idea of what that might cost us, right? Because
No.
as John's talking about not doing the audit, using that money to shift around to cover this, if I'm not mistaken, we've got like 21,000 or something in the budget for audit. We don't have a clue whether that covers half, all, or anything at this point. We don't have a cost estimate of anything, right, to know
We do not.
whether that's worth talking about at this point.
Oh, and I would say part of that is my fault, because Ed has been after me every day to get with him to develop the scope so he can send it out. And
Okay.
my schedule just hasn't
right.
allowed free time.
Yeah, okay,
So I'll make a point to get that done by middle of next week,
yeah,
if so that we can get an
Yeah.
estimate.
yeah.
Now,
I mean, November's not that far away.
Just
so.
to think about an alternative, if Ken Sheriff can't do it, when I spoke with him, he also mentioned Melanson, but we were in a bind with them because they were our auditors, they couldn't do the work. Now, if we take a pause in our auditing arrangement with them, could they then be the likely providers of this interim service?
Yes, they just would not be able to audit us
Right.
for any particular year that they gave us
But-
accounting services.
Right, but if we bypass the audit for 21, then I think we're okay, if I understand it correctly.
Right, and then for due diligence, I say, since it seems like we have 3 potential possibilities, that we ask all 3 of them for the,
Right, for
prices.
cost
For bids,
estimates, I mean,
yes.
that's what I would want to do.
Absolutely.
And then, though, but if I'm hearing you correctly, so if, for example, Melanson was the one that was, the one to come in and work on the 21 books, and we forego the audit for that year, we would still need to go out and put out the RFP, as you suggested last time, I think, for a 3-year audit contract
for
for
2022.
22 on.
22 going forward.
Yes.
Correct.
They could bid on that along with other,
Yes,
Yes.
we just wouldn't have to do it at this time. We could do it later
right,
in
we
the
could
year.
postpone, I mean, we don't have to hurry up and get an audit contract in
Right.
place either, right?
Right.
Okay, that's what.
And of course, the other alternative is we aren't able to postpone the fiscal year 21 audit and have to do it if we've hired Melanson. We'll have to go out and find another firm to probably, and I don't know if we'll find anybody interested in doing 1 year.
Just 1 year?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a challenge,
And
okay.
The budget
So-
number, I think there's 2 line items in the budget, unless it's consolidated. There's the audit, and then there's the OPEB audit.
Two separate items.
Right, so we could combine those $2 amounts.
Could we, really? Yeah?
So you can bypass that one as well.
Well, you don't do an OPEB audit unless you have audited
Okay,
financials.
then-
Well,
You
I
don't
mean,
need-
Well, no, the OPEB audit is done separately, so
It's not part of their normal
it's
audit.
done by an actuarial
Yeah.
piece, so.
It's not part of what Melanson would normally do.
they don't provide it?
No.
It's a separate firm?
It's a separate audit, yes.
So again, I go back to, this is putting more work on the sitting treasurer, but, the Department of Local Services has an excellent program for towns under 10,000 where the treasurer can perform the OPEB audit. And Scott, the deputy director at DLS, he wrote the manual on it. It's just other things to look at, but
Yeah, we should.
I also think that I keep suggesting, only because of my background, you keep loading up the treasurer, but, you have to adjust compensation there too, which is a separate subject.
Right, yeah.
The two
Yeah.
go hand in hand.
Well, they do, and, again, some of these topics I do feel get into our future committee
Yeah,
that,
that-
as we
that
talk about those things, that, what makes sense to be more efficient and cost-effective too in town.
I guess if I could ask for
Yeah.
point of order, because
Yep.
I don't know the process. What would be the process to request leave of a bylaw for 1 year from the citizens?
It would be a town meeting article, probably drafted by Copeland.
Do you need a motion by a select board member to do that?
I would guess so, yes.
I'd like to see the bylaw that it's in first.
Yeah,
Bylaws Committee is meeting tomorrow.
yes.
I'd suggest that maybe the Bylaws Committee take a look at this and bring it forward to our next
Next
meeting
meeting.
on the 26th, and we can have a further discussion and
Mhm.
take a vote at that point in time as to whether that makes sense to
I
go
also
that way.
need to know, is there more reaching effects, ripple effects that we're not considering too? I'm not opposed to it, I just we need to know, is it going to affect,
Right.
approvals, loans, interest rates, et cetera, all of the other contracts that we may have, that we have already agreed to do an audit every year if we
Yeah.
agreed to borrow money, things like
right.
that.
The existing debt says that you have to do it, that part of the ongoing, continuing disclosures of your existing debt, if it's in there, which it more than likely is if there's any 7-figure debt out there, 6 figures may not have it, is that you agree to continue to do these audits. But you also continue to keep the Moody's rating, unless under MGL, and I forget the number of it because I brought it 2 weeks ago, you go through the State House Note Program, and then we're not issuing any debt, we're assigning all our debt to the Commonwealth, and we're coming under the Commonwealth's rating. So therefore, we're just transferring our risk or our liability over to them.
And their rating was basically the same as
It's the
ours.
same as the town, and we're not paying $11,000 for a Moody's rating every year. And we're getting the same credit rating.
Honestly, I would recommend that before we take a vote
Yep.
on this, that we have a written opinion from whomever, whether it's DLS or it's our own town council, or maybe the auditors, but whatever voices we need to be
Yeah.
listening to in order to make the right decision here.
Just to be sure that there's not some hidden
Right,
something.
because Joy's right, there could be repercussions. You make a decision in favor of one thing, and then you roll down the hill a little bit, and you run into,
And-
yeah.
And I agree, and I think we're going to need all those documents in order to convince the population
Yes.
Sure,
to give us
absolutely.
this pass.
Yep,
So-
okay. So let's hold off until, let's have that on the agenda for the October 26th meeting, and hopefully we'll have gathered some more information. So from the bylaws point of view, you'll take a look at the bylaw itself and see what that wording is, and then, once we find that, maybe Ed, you could touch base with our legal counsel, and if that's what you think is the appropriate one to opine upon this?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Do you have any particular thoughts yourself about the idea of bypassing a year in terms of the audit? I mean, is that something you've dealt with in your previous iterations?
I have worked in communities that didn't necessarily do it every year. I mean, it's nice, and it actually may be, cheaper in the long run if you don't skip a year. But like I say, if it's just 1 year and that's it, that's one thing. If you're like starting to skip every other year or whatever, it's, in my opinion, something totally different.
Okay, all right. So let's hold off on this until the next meeting, and we'll move forward with that, all right? All right, good. Moving on, Route 10 Bridgewater Main update.
And like I said, the water department met with the contractor out there and the engineer a couple weeks ago and went through the punch list. So we're just, at this point, it's just
Yep.
waiting for the vendor to, or the contractor to schedule that work and come back and do everything on the punch list,
Good.
which I expect to see just about any time now.
And the East Street Bridge update.
Like I say, later this week, I expect that the directional drilling will start to move the gas line off the bridge. At this point, after talking with John Furman at VHP, I don't foresee actual any construction of starting to demolish or set up there for the actual construction on the bridge itself for probably another couple of weeks. And before they actually start, we'll have a regular pre-construction meeting, and they will also have to have their erosion control in place for the actual bridge work at that point in time, and the Conservation Commission will have to approve of that erosion control methodology in place before they actually
For
start
that
the
one as well.
construction.
Okay.
Correct.
And do you envision at this point that they would probably close off East Street right at Clark Street, so people could at least go around the park, and then Strong Road would be open, or we don't know yet?
The anticipated detour is, yes, close off the bridge, and Strong Road would be open, and Clark Street would be open
Okay,
as the detour route.
that's the theory right now, anyway. Okay,
Yes.
good. Good to know. Okay. Any other questions about old business on that? All right, hearing none, well, let's keep on moving to the new business. Down to the special town meeting date. We look like we have two possibilities, given the holidays and so forth, looking at December 7th or December 14th. And both the dates and location and advance times, all of those things, I think, are open for some discussion tonight. So, Robert, would you like to give us some information from your point of view?
I thought you'd never ask. Robert Floyd, College Highway. I've been thinking about this. If you have the town meeting on December 7, you only have 2 scheduled meetings before then. That's not a lot of time with the board's history. If you meet on the 14th, you double your meetings, you have 4. So either the 14th, which gives you a lot of breathing room, the preference is December 7. I would recommend you consider adding another meeting, maybe the 2nd, because you have to sign it on November 9, assuming you're keeping your Tuesday meetings according to plan. So you have to sign the warrant for a December 7th meeting on November 9. And adding a meeting December 2nd, November 2nd, gives you wiggle room, gives you more time to get answers to your questions. You're going to have a call for articles,
Yep.
and you're going to have a deadline. So there's some work to be done.
True. But if we waited until the December 14th, then our signing time would be the 16th? Or
23rd.
23rd.
And that gives you 4 meetings between now and the 14th.
Big difference.
Yeah.
Yes.
But there's only 1 week of time.
No,
between
it's a
the-
logic. It's your meeting every other week. And the meetings are together, the 7 and 14, only 1 week apart.
I got you.
Okay.
Well, right now, their regularly scheduled meetings would be the 26th of October and then
The
the
9th.
9th of November. That's 2 meetings. The 23rd is actually too late because it's got to be posted 14 days ahead of time, and the 23rd is the 14th day.
For the 7th.
For the 7th.
Right.
So it would have to be the 14th.
It would open it up for signing it on the 23rd for the 14th and give you another regular scheduled meeting.
And Madam Chair, I'd like to extend an invitation for Joy and John to ask questions in general about town meetings. This is my first time in front of you both.
Yep.
I thought of something to present tonight. If you schedule a town meeting and you forget to add an article, or there's an emergency, you can schedule another special town meeting a week or 2 in advance down the road, and then ask people not to show up for the first scheduled special town meeting. The moderator simply adjourns to the second date, and essentially you have 2 town meetings on one date, and you satisfy everything. Sort of like an alley-oop pass in basketball. And the other thing, while you're laughing, you've been concerned historically, as is good, about citizens' petitions, keeping every single word the same. What can be done when they're improperly or illegally written is to have your own article with the same substance as the citizen's petition and put it right in front of the citizen's petition, properly worded with the same substance. Whether it passes or fails, dealing with the next article is just homework, and it's this way. It's another thing that can be done. If you do pick the 7th or the 14th, we need a weather date or opportunity if someone wants to make a motion to adjourn to a date certain to get more information from the town or whatever. So you need to consider to decide whether it's going to be the next day, the 8th or the 15th, or it's going to be the next Tuesday, which would be the 14th for the 7th meeting, or the 21st for the 14th meeting, which then gets you flirting with Christmas.
I guess it's very close to the holidays, yeah.
So maybe having it the next day
Right.
would satisfy that.
And remind me why we're zeroing in on December?
We-
I think there's a reason, but I
Yes,
just forget.
the grant for the Parks Commission requires a town meeting vote.
And I would also ask you to consider having as many articles as possible to get them done with. Because who knows what's going to happen for a special in the winter, whether we need one or not. And we don't want to load up the annual. Look what happened this past one outdoors. Everybody was good enough to stay past the 3 hours. It was wonderful.
Sure, yeah.
So anyway, if we're going to be meeting, and if we're going to be meeting indoors, and it's safe to meet indoors, then an extra period of time won't hurt. And to answer a question earlier, if and only if the 100,000 for the CPA is mandated by the state, a citizen's petition would simply show the favor of the town. There'd be no mandate since it's not a town law.
Correct.
Exemption.
And
If it was something we could change, yes, but looking at my limited experience, I have seen no record in the Commonwealth that that's happened. They've changed it from 3% to 2, 1 to 3, but not the minimum.
Interesting. Okay, good to know. All right.
And again, on citizen petitions, you need 10 for an annual, you only need 100 signature. You need more, you need 100 signatures for a special.
For a special. Okay, yeah, John?
Ed wants to be recognized. Sorry, Ed.
Oh, I'm
And
sorry.
I do have one recommendation that differs from Robert's. Due to the current COVID and coming into the holiday season of Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's, my recommendation is to keep the articles to as few as possible.
That's sound. I can live with that.
Keep, you know, theoretically, keep maybe the,
Maybe a dozen at the
Yeah.
most?
I was gonna suggest maybe about 8, you
Yeah.
know, so,
Yeah.
yeah, to maybe
we were-
8 or 10, but.
We were close to
yeah,
what,
yeah.
30 almost at the,
Make
Yeah.
it easier
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
social distance
Yeah.
and
Somewhat,
whatnot.
And I don't disagree, but on my concept, so we're sitting there already,
right.
a
yeah.
little extra time to get rid of these articles that are on a back shelf
Like, yeah.
would be judicious to proceed, but I do
Mm.
certainly position between Thanksgiving and Christmas, I'll give you that.
Yeah, okay. All right.
And there will be an information session, which we've done every year, every town meeting, Thursday, a week and a half-ish before a town meeting. The moderator sits here and reads the articles. Last year needed help. There were so many. And that gives people a heads up on what's going to
Well,
be.
plus there was one that was about 11 pages long, so.
Voice was
Yeah.
cracking.
Okay. Well, do we want to talk about location first, as well as we talk about a date? Because what do we know for our availability anywhere at
I
this point?
recommend indoors.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think so
yeah.
too.
I have shot an email off to Norris School asking for the availability for the 7th and the 14th, and I have not heard anything back yet, but
It's on the agenda tomorrow night for the school committee to reverse its policy to open up the school. So there'll be a discussion as to whether or not to open the school and potentially maybe just open the school for the town meeting nights. Maybe it has to do, SYAA is involved as well.
Yeah.
For consideration, so.
I saw that on one of the school committee updates. I kind of thought that that might be the case, so.
Push comes to shove, we have the legal right to have it at Hampshire Regional High School, but I'd rather not have everybody driving at night in the dark the next town.
No, okay. Well, at this point in time.
That's an interesting alternative.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It is.
And we almost came to it once when we had 567 people
really.
that showed up.
Right.
And we had 2 rooms, and deputy moderator and I had rehearsed, and the TV cameras. I mean, it worked well. We had discussions on a different mic and voting and runners between rooms. And when it got down to the article, they all came from the second room into the first room. And the former moderator gave me great compliments, but 567 people, one
Well,
room.
I wonder if, are we prohibited from having it on a Saturday?
No, we used to have it on Saturday morning.
Yeah.
Just to the point, if it's Hampshire Regional, if we went down that road, would it make more sense to have it on noon on a Saturday in the middle of December than at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock at night,
Yeah.
Right,
Since-
that would
yeah.
work. That's a better, alternative
if we had to go that
And-
for
far?
that drive.
And sorry for not, I'm listening, but I don't want to forget this, very important. We had a governor's directive to weigh in on changing the quorum last year or 2. We don't have that now. I believe that's no longer on the table, I think. So we have 50. So we certainly have to have enough articles to enhance at least 50 to come and stay the whole process.
Okay. All right.
Well, from the looks of tonight, we get all 50 from the library.
Yeah.
Make it the last article.
Yeah, right.
Be better off,
There you go.
better off simply calling people than posting. Let me say
Exactly.
that.
Well, I mean, hearing everything that's been said here, it strikes me that we need to give ourselves as much time as possible to get prepared and get all the articles. We have an idea of a couple of them probably, but not everything that may be out there that people are looking for to present to us. And in all fairness, we need to be able to put out a call for articles to people and let them know that we will be having this meeting. So I think my preference right now would be to aim for the 14th, but I'm wondering about almost feel like two possible days. 14th, if we could do it maybe at Norris, maybe the 18th, if we had to do it at Hampshire Regional. I mean, I don't know if we can make that kind of broad motion at this point in time. What's anybody think about that? The 18th would be a Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in your experience, is attendance better for a Saturday meeting than a Tuesday night?
Good question. Saturday mornings were really good. I didn't like them as much because early in the morning. I liked the evening ones, sorry very much. But we had, childcare. In fact, historically, we had the elections in the afternoon. It was a picnic, I mean, way back. I believe there's a danger in this situation where you go from an established Tuesday evening to a Saturday. It catches everybody unprepared, and as Ed brought up, you have a lot of holiday seasons going on, and getting 50 people on a Saturday morning, I believe, is going to be harder than a Tuesday. But then again, who knows? We don't have that.
Be more midday-ish, like John suggested. Not
But it was
necessarily-
changed, Francis, to answer your question, it was changed more for personal reasons, for children's ball games on a Saturday afternoon, convenience. It wasn't any attendance at all. The attendance
Okay.
were decent in the morning.
All right.
So-
What's anybody's thoughts? Would anybody like to make a motion about possible date that we can kind of nail down tonight? Are we ready to do that? I think we kind of need to.
I would like to propose that we shoot for the 14th at Norris, and if that does not pass with the committee, that we then hold the 18th and approach Hampshire Regional as a potential alternate venue.
With, I might add, a weather date or
Okay.
a second day date down the
For both.
15th. And if it was a Saturday, we probably wouldn't be meeting on a Sunday, so we'd be meeting on that Monday or Tuesday.
Okay.
That might be a challenge
That
too
wouldn't
with
be-
school.
Monday wouldn't
It-
work on the school.
It's a complicated
No.
motion.
Yeah.
No, until you get to the next week, because then the school's closed.
Right,
That's
but then
Christmas,
you're
yeah.
really into the holiday. Well, I mean, even with our lengthy meetings and lengthy articles, we haven't had to go over. And if, as Ed suggests, we keep it kind of modest in terms of the number of articles, we ought to be able to.
Yeah, I've
done,
I've been here for 20 years of town meeting articles of the select board, and there have been some horror stories.
I'm sure there are.
I would recommend you consider, even if you don't decide what date right now, is adding the 2nd for a possible meeting. And this gives you more time to churn out whatever articles there are and still be able to live with, let's say, the 7th. And then you can change your mind and say, we're not meeting on the 2nd,
Right.
and we're going to have the town meeting on the 14th, and we'll sign it on the 23rd.
Well, the 2nd would, that's a Thursday, right?
No,
November 2nd.
Oh,
November
I'm
2nd, sorry, thank you, Francine. November.
I-
So for me, it gives you options
Mhm.
by thinking you might meet that day.
Yeah. Okay.
Otherwise, it'll go by the boards,
Yeah.
and you're stuck
So-
with the
So it
14th.
almost sounds like we should do the 7th as our primary and the 14th as our backup. Because then the next week is Christmas week.
Right,
So that we only have those 10 days to work within.
right.
If we're going to, we're going to meet in December. And maybe the 7th is primary, 14th is backup, both Tuesday nights. preferably at Norris, but in the event that we can't do Norris, then we go to Hampshire Regional, which means Hampshire Regional in the evening.
And I would say that we pencil in November 2nd as a meeting date for the select board.
This would be wearing masks, social distance.
Boy, December 7th seems very, very close, though. But so that gives us 1, 2,
It goes quickly.
3 meetings before? Is that right?
But
The
is-
26th, the
One?
2nd, the 6th, or the 9th?
2, 3, yes, it would give.
Well, actually, you're on point, but you have to sign it for December 7th meeting. You would have to sign on November 9.
Ninth.
If you met on November 2nd, you would have the 26th, the 2nd, and the 9th to process the articles and sign on the 9th for December 7th.
I mean, unless I overbooked my calendar, I have that we're meeting every Tuesday. Now, the off Tuesdays are executive sessions.
The off
Correct.
Tuesday,
Correct.
exactly.
We could tack
Trade-off.
something in there if we needed to,
Right.
right? We've already committed to being here
Yeah.
to try and clear all those things up.
Yes.
Yeah, no, November 2nd's not an issue for me. I'm just worried about, that gives us 2 real meetings before we have to finalize and sign a warrant.
And you haven't even called for the articles
We
yet.
haven't called for the articles. They won't have gotten through KP Law. I mean, I just
Oh,
don't.
that's a great point.
I don't
There
see,
you go. That does it.
I don't see how we
It's the
can
14th,
do that. I think, I
Yeah.
and a
don't know.
meeting on the 2nd.
I'd go with the 14th,
Yeah.
and the 15th is
14th.
the weather date.
Yeah.
And then call for the articles to be back by November 4th at noon.
November 4th.
the Thursday. Okay. So the 14th is a Tuesday,
Yes,
no date, the 15th?
15th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that, I
I never said that word.
I
I
know,
only
I
said
know.
weather.
didn't.
Yeah,
But then, okay, so then articles in
November 4th.
by November 4,
At noon,
at noon, to my office.
November 4th at noon.
primary location to be Norris, secondary would be Hampshire Regional.
That'd be fine. And then that gives us then scheduling the November meetings for November 2nd, November 9th, and the 23rd?
Well, you don't need to consider November 2nd as a possible meeting date if you're going to choose the 14th of December.
But we may be doing an executive
Yeah.
session anyway, so that's fine. It just gives us
Okay.
that much more
Yeah.
time. Okay, could we have a motion then to suggest our special town meeting to be set for December 14th in the evening? We usually do what time? Around 7. December 14th at 7 PM, and an extension date if needed on December 15th. Primary location at Norris, secondary location at Hampshire Regional.
With a call for articles by
Sorry.
November 4th at noon to Ed's
Okay, yep.
office.
And a call for articles into Ed's office by noon on November 4th.
I'll make that motion.
All right,
Second.
all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so be it.
Okay.
That
Thank
will
you.
at least move us forward a little bit. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Teamwork.
Robert.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robert.
Okay, good. Okay, and next on the agenda, we have our fire chief to request a review of paramedics' pay rates. So, John, please come on up.
Okay, I know after following library and all that we're talking about, I know the town is not in the greatest position financially, and unfortunately, I don't have tremendous news. One of the bigger challenges that are facing EMS service in the state as a whole is that we're having shortcomings in personnel available for paramedics and EMT basics. And like the pandemic, Southampton doesn't get a free pass. We're experiencing some of those shortages now, which are affecting our ability to respond effectively, which is 8-minute response time to each call is the national standard. When that happens, when we're short personnel, short paramedics. With a paramedic, we can get an intercept from another community. It costs us money to do that. If we don't get adequate staff, then we actually lose the call to another community. And we also lose level of service because any other community in our area, Easthampton might be the best prepared to get there within 8 minutes to probably 65% of the community. Westfield could do the other side of the community to get that 8-minute response time, but you can't count on them having available staff all the time. So it really does, the push for a fire department is to really have staff in-house to respond as needed to make the level of service that, to make the ALS level of service, the 8-minute response time to calls. Every community is going to miss some calls, whether it be your overtaxing staff. We have one ambulance. Once that ambulance goes out, we're going, if another call comes in directly thereafter, we're always going to have some of that. We go to other communities. We go to Westfield. We go to Easthampton, occasionally Northampton if they have a structure fire. So there's some degree of calls that are going to come and be in other communities. But it's gotten to the level here in town that it's concerning. Mm-hmm. And so I'm in front of you because I don't want this to be a surprise to anyone. And just really need to get some ideas to really move forward as a community to see how we can address this. Let's put on my glasses if they don't fog up here.
Maybe, John, if you could just if you could tell us a little bit about paramedics versus EMTs.
Sure. And
just, how many people are we talking about, et cetera, that you have on call now, et cetera?
Yeah, absolutely. So a paramedic is basically like an associate's degree. It's about a 2-year program to gain it. The more a paramedic works, the better they get. So if you have a first-year paramedic, they're just learning. They've learned everything that they need to in the school, and then they really need to get out and start to work. Ideally, we put a first-year medic in with another paramedic so you're not pushing their knowledge base, and they've got a time to learn. We're lucky in Southampton in the fact because we do have per diem paramedics from other communities. We've got a lot of high-quality, 15 to 30 years of experience folks that are working for Southampton. Very experienced crew from all over, not just Easthampton. We have Westfield, Amherst, Northampton, Agawam. So we've got we draw a pool from a lot of different folks in the area. A basic doesn't do near so much. So a basic, when they come to a scene, they're pretty much stabilization and transport. A paramedic can offer therapies that would, make the difference if they had like a brain problem. Just to give you some medicines that will have a better outcome for a patient. That and just, other cardiac. There's just a whole lot more therapies that a paramedic can do. So the quality of care is not just double, it's probably 8 times greater than just the basic level of care of a basic. So the town had voted to go, the town had worked with the select board and the chief at the time in about 2012, just prior to my arrival, to go to a paramedic level service. They went into an agreement with the state, and when I came in 2013, I pretty much got handed the new program to go paramedic. The problem at that time, it was an unfunded mandate to the town, and so the town really, we did some struggling in our infancy, did a lot of compensation studies, did studies that the town administrator at that time had done to see whether it was worthwhile to go to another community to look for outside intervention for EMS coverage. It was determined at that time that it made better sense to keep the service in town. It was a higher level of service at a reduced cost. I think that's still true. I think that the problems that I'm having in wages are like even an AMR or an action, they're paying, probably $3 to $4 more than we're paying our entry-level paramedic. So if they covered it, they're going to have to pay their staff the same we have to pay our staff. We've paid less than most other communities, and we've had a pretty solid workforce, just because I think they like the environment. It's a good crew, they work well together, they produce good level of care. But recently, we've lost some of our heavy hitters, if you will. So we might have 40 people on the staff, but there may only be anywhere from 10 to 25 that are available to take shift, and some may take a fair amount of shifts, and some may take one shift a month. So it becomes a little difficult because you really do need a lot of staff available. It's a part-time job for all of them. None of them work full-time. I'm the only full-time here in town. And so you're really dependent on people who are working within the industry already to do a second job here in Southampton to cover our ambulance on the paramedic level. I think COVID put some particular stresses on that, just because, there was a lot of challenges to taking care of folks in this COVID pandemic that put a lot of pressure in their stations where they have their full-time employment. And it also put pressures on us because of higher call volumes. We're currently experiencing probably 70 more calls this year than we did last year. So call volume is up. Medical calls are up by probably about medical calls are up by probably 40. So fire calls are up and medical calls are up. So there's challenges industry-wide, and so Southampton is facing those challenges. Unfortunately, like I say, we've lost some of our heavy hitters. One of them went to the medical examiner's office. We've lost a couple to injury, military service. One of them got hurt. Just different things that have gone on. Some with just some personal life changes. But when you lose a couple of your heavy hitters, now all of a sudden you have big gaps in your coverage. Even with 42 people on the roster, there's not the availability. In years past, in order to deal with that kind of problem, I've reached into the EMS community, if you will, which is Western Mass, really. And I've tried to, pick the best paramedics that I could find, ones that were vetted through the group that we have because we work so well together, and with a high level of care that we want here in Southampton. And we've been really fortunate because in the past there's always been a fair pool out in the community, the Western Mass community, so that we had a fair amount to choose from. Currently, with shortages throughout the region, that isn't the case anymore. So not only are we losing people, taking other jobs, but they're also, as we try and reach out to get more staffing in to maybe increase that roster if we need to, the folks aren't available. So it's a challenge. One of the biggest challenges within that is, I just hired a medic, a brand new medic from, he's an AMR guy. He works at AMR currently, it's his primary job. He started as a medic there for just about $23.90 an hour. Our starting rate for a basic is $20.36. You could work as a bus driver here in town for the schools and earn $25, and you wouldn't have to maintain your license with all the medical knowledge and be responsible for the life and death situations that you run into. So it's really challenging you have to find folks that love it and are doing it because it's a passion for them, and have experience, because you don't want just brand new people. And so those are the challenges that we have. I don't think that, we can't compete well with AMR, but I think we need to get closer to their rate of pay. And I use AMR because they're the lowest paid in the area. If you go to Easthampton, I have the numbers. I'd have to put on my glasses and I can quote them. We can get you more information as you need. But Easthampton is approximately $26 an hour. Let me try and quote some for you rather than me shooting from the hip. So Southampton is $20.36. AMR is $23.90. Southwick is $27.35. Easthampton is $28.15. Granby is $24.99 for a full-time medic, but then if you're a part-time, because they also use per diem at night, They don't get any step increases, but they start their medics at $25.98. So we're significantly less than anyone else in the area, significantly less. So I'm not sure, and I'd be happy to sit with any of you folks that had some time to go over some of the documentation that I've gotten from other communities so you can actually see. It would be nice if we did some sort of compensation study. I was almost thinking of taking this tack to go through the Personnel Policy Procedures Board, just because I could work with that group to show them some of these other communities. We could look at the money that they're earning and what would be a fair wage to bring in here to Southampton. I think that, you know, that's fine. I'd be more than happy to sit down and build that with anyway. And I've gotten a lot of documentation. We could get any documentation that you would like to move forward with that. But the immediate concern is this last month, I've had a number of open shifts, which I don't like open shifts. Open shifts means I don't have any EMT at all to cover a shift. And granted, the number may be lower. I can quote some figures again, but an open shift, we may just have like 10 open shifts. So we have 2 shifts a day. But 10 open shifts is a lot of shifts. That means there's not an ambulance in town that can respond. The other problem that we have is a short shift where we only have 1 EMT that's on shift.
And if I'm understanding, you want 1 EMT and 1 paramedic on each shift? Or?
Ideally, that's an ideal mix only because we save the most money that way, because that's the minimum staffing level. The problem is if I have a brand new medic, I need to pair him with another medic. So that works some of the time, doesn't work all the time.
So if you can't answer a call, then you mentioned another town would come and do an intercept.
Another call would come and be primary.
Yeah, and that costs us money to pay them.
Well, we lose, you know, our billing right now, and I was going to kind of get to that at the end. Our billing, you know, is about $1,700 for an ALS2 call. And so we lose $1,700 potentially on that call for each one that we give away. And this year, since January to now October, we've lost 57 calls.
57 calls.
57 EMS calls.
You're not able to answer.
That we're
because of
not
staff.
able to answer because of staff shortages.
And the average cost per call is?
The average cost per call, let me dig into my data a little bit.
Is it the ambulance
cost or
billing
the
line, or
revenue?
which line, or where does
So-
this come
You
from?
want the cost or
What's
the
that?
revenue?
Which line is this? Is the ambulance billing line?
We
or
have
is
to
that-
pay out.
It's a EMS wage is probably.
EMS wage,
I know they
Yeah.
charge out for
but
it.
the ambulance billing line is something else.
Billing, yeah, billing is what we pay for the coastal medical billing company
Okay.
that does all of our billing, gets a lot of the reports from the hospital, sends all the letters to
Right.
folks trying to collect.
Right. But you're talking about your EMT wages, basically. line.
Yeah, I'm talking wages because unless we cover the calls to send to the billing, we don't collect any money from the call. I've gotten a fair amount of reports. I spent a fair amount of time on the phone with our billing company. The other problem that we have, of course, is you don't collect on every call. So out of those 57 calls, you know, you're probably on average for every community, not just Southampton, you collect approximately 50% of those calls you can bill out on. So you may charge out at $400,000, but you're only going to collect about $200,000. It's actually a relative average for us. And part of the problem is like a Medicaid or a Medicare, which is only going to pay $300 or $400 in a call, even though we charge at $1,700, no matter what we raise that rate to, you're only going to collect what Medicaid or Medicare is going to pay. So the rest of that really needs to be written off, so it's not a viable thing. I couldn't stand up here and say that every call is going to be worth that $1,700. But
Doesn't the individual have to pay what's over and above what Medicare paid?
there is a liability to the individual, but chasing sick people is a challenge. And if they're deceased, that makes another challenge that you then get into with.
It's also, what role do we want the fire department ambulance service to do? Do we want town employees chasing
Yeah.
sick people.
Bill collection, yeah, acting as a bill collection agency.
Yeah,
The billing company Coastal doesn't do that for us?
oh, they do, to a degree. So I've in the past got lots of documentation because one of my, when I really started to look at billing, I did a couple of things just to try and increase revenue in years past. One thing I found that if we did really scrutinized our information that we got from a patient, because if you can get all of their insurance information, signatures become a real big deal. Medicare, Medicaid won't pay if they don't have a signature. During the COVID, that was a really challenge to get signatures. So there was a loophole for a short period of time where you didn't have to get a signature, but that's no longer the case. So if someone has no ability to sign, it's very challenging. The billing company actually has to chase to try and get a signature that's on file at the hospital. If the patient is unable to give that signature, that's almost an unbillable call. It can take months often to run a call through to actually send a bill out, depending on the insurance information that the billing company can gather. So I brought one of my lieutenants in and gave him $1 an hour stipend to really work on just ensuring that we're producing as much information to the billing company as we possibly can. And that paid off. I mean, it upped our income by probably $20,000 just to have this individual be dotting I's, crossing T's, following up to make sure that individuals didn't miss things, didn't just not think it important, and we lost the billing on it. So we really spent some time to ensure that we are maximizing our billing to the best of our ability. As I start to get into numbers and where we need to go with some of this, which I was going to end with, but since we're talking about it, billing, I have the ability to raise rate. And honestly, rates have been fairly plateaued since about 2015, and there is opportunity. We'd base them to be fairly close to what Easthampton was doing. I think Easthampton is in the process of making a change. But just as I got probably 4 other comparable communities that Coastal had provided their numbers, we'll probably go from ALS 2, because they have different designations of ambulance status when they go out on a call. So a basic level call, for instance, right now, we charge $785.50. An ALS call with a paramedic, we charge $941.36. Through different therapies, what they call an ALS 2 call, it goes up to $1365.50. You get some mileage charged in that, and there's some ancillaries therapies that are outside of the ALS 2 stature that we also charge for in addition. I'm looking to work with the billing company just because we need to ideally get more revenue, because I know that that's a challenge for the town. And there is a percentage of private payers that will pay the amount that you charge. So it is worthwhile to go up on your billing. You may not get it from Medicare, but you'll get it from some of the private payers. And we'd be going to a base, a BLS run at $967.40, an ALS run of $1,600, a ALS 2 run of $2,457. We've been going up on our mileage charge, and our ancillaries are just added charges that would kind of just be added charges, wouldn't really vary on top of that. So it's a substantial increase that we're looking at in order to bring in more revenue. But the challenge really comes, I want to provide this, we need to provide the service to the town. We need to provide good advanced level care so that people are taken care of when they have a problem here in town. It's the point of the ambulance service. There is the benefit of being able to get revenue, but to me, it's not about so much the revenue, it's about providing service. And so, and being fair to the men and women that are dedicated and here working for not a lot of money when they could work at other places for a whole lot more. And it's been a challenge. The budget, I had a budget of about $465,000 approximately, shooting from the hip again, in the FY '20 budget. Currently, my budget is $20,000 less than that, or no, I'm sorry, $10,000 less than that, but I pay, we did a 2% increase across the town, and that was never added to my budget. So I've got about a $20,000 shortfall from my FY '20. We're in FY '22. In FY '20, I've got a $20,000 shortfall, and I'm not paying my guys not near enough. So it's a rock and a hard place. And as much as I really don't want to come in front of you and say that there's problems responding to calls and adequate staff, I would be against doing my duty to not come forward and fall on the sword, if you will, because it's a problem that's just really starting to be a problem, not just an occasional here and there. I mean, it's been building a bit, but now that I've lost a few key people, it's a problem that we need to look at right now. I need to look at right now, and I believe the service needs to. And so if I look at an increase, and I was looking at an increase along the lines of probably $3 an hour to a paramedic and $1 an hour extra for a basic. Basics tend to be a younger group. They're not as monetarily driven as a paramedic, which is really a profession now. And even though that would be under the lowest rate in the industry, you couldn't get any other department to provide the same level of service for less cost, and we're still providing it, but it's an increase for the department. Worst case scenario, it's unrealistic to think that if you said, yes, go ahead and do that tonight, it would be unrealistic to think that I could actually even get all the medics, because there's still a shortage in the industry. But I need to have at least something so I can attract them and say, hey, we're a good service. We've got a good group. We work as a team. Southampton is a nice community to work in. It's not, high pressure like an AMR in Springfield where you're dealing with gunshots and everything else that comes across the board. Not that we don't have an occasional, but it's a good service to work in. And so, that monetary thing, I mean, I averaged it out, it's about 642 man hours per pay cycle. We have 26 pay cycles. We're talking approximately $30,000 to $40,000 is a good approximation, additional cost that would be looking to needing.
For the year.
For the year, to finish out this year. And would really, I know there's no money, and I don't even know how to even ask for money, because I don't know, there's no money trees around. But for the next fiscal year, I would really look to, building back my FY '20 budget to where it was, plus the 2% increase that we've done, plus whatever pay increase that we do here. And maybe it needs to be an article that we put in front of the town meeting for a vote. And I know that everybody is vying for the same free cash, which they're a joke that there isn't any, but it's not really a joke. I'm sure it's hard. It's not like that money's just going to be found under a rug somewhere. It's going to be money that we're going to work to find.
Sure, and I think our challenges are always that it's not just a one-time cost, it's a recurring cost. So
Yeah.
even if you do some fixing now, we definitely have, bigger issues down the line, so
Yep.
it's not that easy to solve. Okay, and I assume this is going to be something as part of your budget presentation when we get into the budget season as well.
Oh, absolutely, and I would appreciate the opportunity to, and one thing that didn't happen last year is I never got really an opportunity to present in front of the Finance Committee. And I think that that's a crucial step for a department head, just because when the budget came out and it had a shortfall already with a 2% increase, it made no sense. In years past, I have had, because of shortfalls with either ALS, or because we've always had some level of shortfalls, whether it be not an available paramedic or whatever it happened to be, as we've built the service, because remember, we just really the town voted for the second shift. When did that go through? 2016? Thereabouts. I'm sorry, I'm phoning a friend in the audience to try and help me here. So So in about 2016, we did go in front of the town with an override, and specifically it was to get the second shift so we had full-time ambulance coverage. Since then, it's just, we've been building the service because you're not just going to hit the ground running. You're going to, just start and work. Then we've got the trailer, which works as sleeping quarters, because before that we were having folks sleep in chairs. So we're building it. Hopefully we'll be looking at a new station. Hopefully we'll be looking like a department that is more attractive to the limited folks that are out there in the EMS community. And they'll want to come in, even though we may not, even with $3 added, we won't be the highest, but I think we'll still be an attractive bet for them. And I know that when John had come in, we'd talk some just about, what would it look like to bring in an outside service. And honestly, if you're going to have, a level of service where you're going to get to calls within the 8 minutes, that's the national standard for a response on an ALS unit, you're not going to go to Easthampton at $25 an hour or $28 an hour and get the service for cheaper. You can't even, AMR is paying more. And honestly, if you get an AMR or an action, they're going to stage an ambulance on the Holyoke line. And I just don't believe that service would be the same as having the service here in Southampton with the response and the community level of support that we get from the really fantastic job that the men and women do now. I really am proud of the group. They do a great job. They've stuck with it through thick and thin. I think this pandemic really pushed the envelope of what these folks do.
Understood.
Yeah. So,
But I think, again, timeliness is, with all of our talk about our new committee, all this stuff about cost efficiency and how can we improve our service, how can we either share services, how can we get other towns maybe to help, buy into some of our services, what are some of the creative ways that we're looking at trying to both raise money and also, provide a level of service that everybody expects in town. That's part of our charge with this new ad hoc committee that we're setting up. So again, this is a very timely topic to raise before us. John?
I think also, given the latest census data is out from the feds over the past 10 years, and the population of the town of Southampton's grown by 7.5% over 10 years, and I don't know what's grown behind that, but the earlier analysis that I did while the library was talking, we put 161 new houses on the plots here in town. We didn't lose houses. So that's a net gain. If you figure the average, I think the census said the average home in Southampton maintains 2.3 people. You do the math, the numbers are growing up. I think the first question is to ask the voters to reaffirm. Do you want 24/7 ambulance service? And do you want 24/7 fire? My guess is the answer is going to be yes. Okay, then that's what it is. I think one of and the fire department is no different than any other department when I have this criticism, is that it's just the way we do the budget. There's a line item for wages. Right. So what I'm hearing is one paramedic around the clock and one EMT around the clock is your ideal situation.
correct.
Right? So 168 hours a week, 52 weeks, that's 8,736 person hours. So there should be a paramedic line item and then an EMT line item. Here, there. Yes, you can transfer in between wages. You can't go from expenses to wages. And it might create more work. But what I didn't hear is I didn't hear any requests for the fire department. So those that are on the fire department, are you comfortable with those wages right now?
Well, honestly, because so much of the service, like when a call comes in and the folks that we're getting are not the AMR, just paramedic only. The folks that we have and staff are also academy-trained firefighters.
Yep.
So if a call comes in, if they work a shift, and let's just use for the sake of discussion that they work a 10-hour shift and there's no call that comes in at all. Well, half of that could have been a fire call, could have been an EMS call.
Yeah, no, yep.
So as because I went around with this with the finance committees, and this is not my first time dealing with every question that you've had, so I'm happy to spend some time answering for you. So I really looked at, first I started to do a budget where it was like, okay, if we're doing 72% EMS and the rest in fire, then why don't we proportion the budget at that to sort of set it? It becomes kind of relative because what happens as soon as you have a fire call, you get many more personnel than just the 2 that you put for staffing on an ambulance. You can have 12, 15, 20 on a fire call.
So your general staffing
So what I,
Doesn't have a firefighter only
Cor-
in the station house. The firefighter only comes in on a second call or,
comes in on a 3-hour minimum. So if we get a call that comes in, like we just had, and I'm sorry if you're distracted, we had a traffic accident just down the street. Whatever folk come in, they're going to get a 3-hour minimum to respond to that call. And then if they work longer than that 3 hours, we had a structure the other night where we're spending a little bit more time. And so whatever it is, that's what we pay. So for the budget, I pretty much, the fire wages and the EMS wages are always about the same. And it just kind of works out. And so,
I just think it's hard, as a layperson on the outside, one of the residents that just sees this line item, I think the more details that we can put in the budget, specifically if we decide, if the voters decide, we're going to have EMS or ALS 2 around the clock, that requires a paramedic for 8,736 hours.
but that paramedic may not just respond to ALS.
I hear you, but that's the bare minimum we need to pay. You know, we might be able to use them over on fire and all this stuff.
Yep.
But the other thing that isn't being shared, I mean, it is because you said it, but I don't think the public knows it. So when you say you're unable to respond to a call, doesn't that really mean that there's nobody in the station to go? And
That's
you're dark?
correct.
Right, so that's even a bigger public. So the perception is that there's folks sitting over there all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's,
Based
yeah,
on what you said tonight, that's not the
Yeah.
case. And I think
and if a
that's,
fire comes in, you'll draw people from home, but it's not the same as
Right, but that's the fire
ambulance ready to roll being there within 8 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the same. And so I really have spent some time to sort of break down between fire and EMS. And so, as I was saying, if it take just a straight day with no calls, I split it in half because they could respond to either call. If a call comes in on the EMS side, I do 3 hours. It comes out of the EMS side of the pay scale. And then the rest gets split 50-50. So if they do 2 calls or 3 calls, that's 9 hours, covers the whole shift on the EMS side. So I do proportion it towards EMS or fire with the budget. And then towards the end of the year, if there's a lopside to one side or the other, then I figure out to do transfers as needed.
Yeah, between
Yeah.
EMS and fire, but not the level of EMS versus paramedic.
I think there's
Yeah.
a better way that would allow you to then have analytical data to go back to the community and say, this is what we got to pay a paramedic, 20X, whatever it is, right? Because I came up with $34,994 to do the $3 and the $1, right? So that's a big number. There's a comma in there. So, there needs to be a story to explain to that. And then maybe there needs to be, based on your last 3 years of actual fire calls, a separate line of, hey, this is where we pay the fire at, but we're always going to pay the paramedic and the EMT because we've dedicated to keeping this ambulance here.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
probably not for tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, as we get into budget discussions, I think this is all discussion
Yeah,
and
and I'm
ideas
more
there.
than happy to share, because I've got a matrix as to, for years of experience that they work.
Yeah.
I give extra money if they have, like, the fire side of things and those kind of things.
I would
which kinda
assume, I just want to be clear, I thought you did present before the finance committee last year. You did not?
help. I didn't have that opportunity.
I thought everybody was invited to present their budget before the finance committee. I thought they went
They
through.
were.
They went through everybody. Didn't
I
they?
thought you did.
I don't,
I thought there
I'm
were
pretty sure you
questions.
did.
Yeah, there were questions.
I'm
of
100%
you.
positive
well-
you did.
Last year was the most structured we had been because we had not had a committee the year before.
yeah, well,
Last year with Ken Cole and Mary Syriac and
yeah.
Rachel.
If I presented, I guess it just didn't feel effectual, because the numbers that I presented, all of a sudden what came out for town meeting there was a lot of short. No 2% was added on, and there was money that was also, I guess it felt ineffectual. And if what I'm remembering is that it just felt ineffectual, then perhaps that's what.
Okay, well, we'd have to review that again. But anyway, there will be an opportunity this year as we get our budget structure going, but also with this new committee that's coming up. I mean, I think this is good information for us to give us a heads up in some of the challenges you're facing. I mean, I'm not,
Yeah, and as much as you can produce
Yeah.
that in detail,
Yeah,
you said you have a matrix of produce
That'd
that
be helpful.
material, because that's the kind of thing I think people are going to be wanting.
yeah,
Yeah,
I've got so much detail that I'm afraid that I overwhelm you. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, because I will certainly get you, the other part of my problem is, I'm going to be taking a vacation that's supposed to start tomorrow, but I've got some business I've got to clear up in the department before I can leave. And it's not opportune only because, you know, I want to make sure that I get on to any kind of warrant article for the town meeting on the 4th. And I'm taking 13 days, which is the longest vacation I've taken in a number of years. So that's why, I mean, I would have had more that I would have given you for data just prior to this meeting, but I wanted to make sure it read well.
All right, at least to get this far and let us know that this is an issue and
Yeah.
something that we'll be hearing about again, I'm sure, so.
Absolutely.
Thanks for your
And
time
yeah, I can
coming.
provide more data to Ed. I'll work on that.
Yeah, get
And,
anything to Ed and we'll get it around.
Yeah,
From
yeah,
him. Yep.
and yeah, okay. And maybe honestly, I know that it might be productive to even sit with one of you folks just prior to submission to Ed, just so that I can ensure that you get some sense that I'm covering bases. I know that could be helpful.
I'll leave that to Ed. He's got his time schedule. He can determine how he wants to handle that.
Yeah, now that he's got all this extra time without having to do the accounting, right?
Right.
Right.
So, good. Well, thank you, John. We appreciate you coming and all the time, and I hope you can get out and have a good vacation. at
Yeah,
least.
I'm looking forward
All
to
right,
it.
good.
All right, thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Take care, John.
Great. All righty, let's keep on moving here, guys. We're running time. COVID-19 update. Do we have much to say here? I know we heard a little bit from what Francine reported from the Board of Health, but is there any other?
Our Southampton numbers are dropping, knock on wood. Hampshire's still in that orange category, is it? And my recall is Hampshire County is only at about 61% vaccinated, so, there's some, shall we say, concerns there, but the good sign, at least for Southampton, is at least in the last couple of weeks, our numbers are lower than they were previously.
Mm-hmm. But I think, Francine, you said there's been 16?
According, as of September 30th, there were 16 cases.
16 cases as of September 30th. Okay.
That came off the
State list?
the state dashboard.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Moving on to the CARES expense status. I wanted to present you this document here. It's in your packets. It didn't get in I don't think it got around on the electronic version. But this is something that I've been working on, trying to help out with the tracking of the CARES money that we've been spending. And so this is still, it's a good draft. It's not absolutely perfect. But you have basically a page more or less for each department. So for example, there's Board of Health, Council on Aging, Emergency Manager, the core town hall, which is essentially Ed and crew, Emergency Manager, Fire Department, Highway Department, the library, and then I think I called something other other organizations, and that included the Agricultural Committee, the Housing Authority, and the Community Cupboard. And then other town hall, which is essentially the building department. They're the only ones that had a request in for the CARES money per se. All of the department heads, as you know, got folded into the core town hall because of the laptops that was basically their main acquisition during this. Police department and Norris School and the town clerk had a little bit of a separate one because we put the annual town meeting and special town meeting costs in there. So this gives you an idea of the kinds of things that people had asked for from the CARES account, department by department. And what you have here is basically when Ed and I allocated out funds, depending on how the CARES money was given to us, I guess I would say. And just a reminder, we got, correct me, Ed, $533,000, I believe, total?
Yes.
About that.
Rounded,
And
yep.
in 2 tranches, and I got involved only in the second tranche. So a lot of this money at the top part of your page, oftentimes with the, anything with wages or PPE was usually the heaviest part was in the first round of the CARES money that we got, probably in the middle, late spring, early summer probably of 2020. But anyway, what I've tried to do, and I'm going to be passing this out, the various department heads have seen this. They had probably seen the last copy about 3 months ago, so I'm going to send this around to them. But what it is the vendor invoices I've been taking off every town report. As you know, that I've been signing warrants last year. So I was keeping track of vendor invoices. And so what you have here as of September 9th reporting, you've got the vendor that would have been used to pay whatever that item is to your left-hand column there. And in many cases, you have probably, let me find one who's a good example. I don't know, somebody here has got to have a couple. Maybe the library, yeah, the library, for example. Not to pick on them, but just they were here tonight. Under the line item, for example, of hand sanitizer and gloves, okay? So you've got vendor invoices for Uline, Amazon, Mass Surgical, WB Mason, and Richco. So all of those vendors are vendors that they use to buy these things, and the $909 is what's been invoiced so far and paid. And when you see the online version, when you click on the 909, up in the formula bar, you will see how much it was per each vendor, okay? So that's how the total then came up to those. So this allows them to track what I've done to make sure that we're in sync with their own records, each department's records of what they've done. Where there are some discrepancies that I have to go back on are mostly wages, people that were out due to exposure to COVID or risk of a family member having COVID, et cetera, et cetera. There were some wages that I might have misallocated, especially because some of the police and fire and highway folks work multiple departments, and I may have attributed them to the wrong department. So there's a little bit to be re-verified with the department heads. But this is essentially how a lot of the money was spent. We are, at my totals, somewhere around the, I guess we thought we had about 100,000, I think, Ed, left to reprogram, because
Correct.
a lot of this was not spent out. So out of our 500 and some thousand, for example, just on the very first one, a public health nurse, that was a request in round one for $15,000. Well, it was approved at that time, but it never got used. So that's money that can be shifted to cover some other overage that they might have had in a different line. But this is really, don't think of it as an overage or underage in that sense. This is just an internal management tool, really, for the departments. This is not the report that gets filed to state or the feds or anybody else. This is just showing them what got approved to be bought, especially from the equipment items, which that was the biggest ask in round two, was all the various kinds of equipment that people wanted. And so you will see, for example, on the fire page, on the second page of the fire one, there's a listing there of the equipment that John had asked for that was not approved. And that was not, Ed and I, that was not approved by the state, by the CARES Act program, okay? So that's just to give you a sense of what we're doing to try to keep this moving forward, and I'm relatively comfortable with it, but definitely, it needs a real accountant to sit down and look at it. I've just been trying to track it and keep it going so that we know where we are, and that it helps Ed to do the reports that he's got to do for state. And I believe we've got until the end of this month to do reprogramming. So we've definitely got to spend some time with the various departments and re-verify if they're, I know a couple of them have approached us saying, we need to do this and this, can we do that? And we've just got to say yay or nay, or contact the person at state to be sure that it's okay to allocate funds and spend it that
So you're
way.
moving it around. If it wasn't spent in one department, it could be reprogrammed for use in another department.
It could be another department, it could be
Okay.
within the same department, yeah. No, this is really just an internal
Okay.
management tool. Please just
Okay.
think of it like that. It's not a set in stone budget per se. Okay?
All right.
Does that make sense to people?
Yes.
So this is the level of sort of detail, but the kinds of things that people were spending the CARES money on. So just to say that we've got a pretty good idea of where things have gone, and this covers through, like I say, up till a month ago. So I'll be trying to also update that. But it's really been the, there were some, large amounts that were allocated early on for things like PPE, for example, only because we had no clue. We didn't know what we needed, and, the early days of the pandemic, we really just didn't, we didn't know what expenses we were going to have, what we were facing, right? So a lot of money got put in certain areas that, probably is way underspent because, again, there were times where we couldn't find the PPE, other times we managed to get it free through various connections. So that's just kind of the status of things. But if anybody has a question, I can try to answer, or not.
I have a question.
I'm sure you do.
No, only because it all came up tonight.
Yep.
And I guess I'll pose the question knowing I'm not going to get the answer tonight. So if I look at the MU7 for the library,
Yeah.
fiscal year 2021 was $157,365. Does that or does that not include the additional $13,732 that was given as CARES funds? Because if it does, that brings it up to almost $170,000, which means,
I don't believe it covers the CARES money.
right, so
Because it wasn't an
It's not-
appropriation of the town.
Is that an
we
appropriation?
appropriated the CARES money.
No, but it wasn't from this, the
Yeah.
source was not the town, it was
Yeah.
an external source. It's like that they can't
Yeah.
collect money from donors
Yeah.
to make up the $9,800 and some dollars, simply because it's
Yeah.
not acceptable.
None of-
Yes,
none of the
donors,
CARES-
I understand.
None of the CARES money was taken into consideration when people came to present their budget request to the Finance Committee last year. The CARES money
Agreed.
separately, so the
But as far
13,
as certification purposes goes for this form,
I don't think so, but Ed?
No, this CARES money would not count
Yeah.
towards that
Because it's not actually part of the town budget.
budget.
it's sitting on our balance sheet of $553,000. But I yield your point.
But it wasn't,
I know. Yeah, I agree.
Did not originate from the tax bases with the commitment that they're looking for.
yeah, exactly.
That's my understanding
I'm
of it.
not the lawyer in the room, but I could
Yeah.
make an argument since the calculation was $262 for every resident in the town.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
I hear you.
Yeah.
it was possible.
Yeah.
There's a connection there.
yeah. So anyway,
Somebody's
We should
taxes.
still find the money for the library, but I'm just
Yeah.
Oh,
saying,
yeah.
just making a
Yeah.
point.
but I think, this just at least gives you an idea where, where things are somewhat. And so there is money to be spent in just about all areas. There's only a couple that have actually used all the money that had been attributed to them or designated towards them, whatever you want to
And
say.
do they have a deadline to request for reconsideration?
Before the end of, well, I mean, we need to get them thinking about that. We've had 3 or 4 that have come to us with ideas for requests, and I don't know how many more there really are.
Yeah,
Most just want to use up the few dollars that they seem to have
I'll bring it
left.
up again on Thursday.
Yeah, so with the department head meeting on Thursday, we can bring that up again, and I'll circulate this around to everybody before that, so they can look at their things. But I wouldn't expect any more, like, the Ag Commission is not going to come back to us, I'm pretty sure. The Community Cupboard might come back to us,
So for purposes of sharing with other bodies, i.e. the school committee,
Uh-huh.
tomorrow night,
Yeah,
their district is holding off on filing the state reports pending determination as to whether or not the request is going to be considered at all.
uh-huh. Yeah, and I don't know that we know that yet. I mean, as you look at the school department here, I mean, they did finally turn in all their invoices. They
Right.
did get everything that they were allocated in terms of.
Right, no, and I
yeah.
think they understood that this was
Yeah.
asking for reallocation
Right.
of funds from other departments, so.
So this is, this would have to come from other departments. So, I mean, there are other areas where I would think we're not going to touch whatsoever. That, like, a couple of these, is like, we haven't used it yet, I can't see us spending it now. But we would probably take a look at, is there something else within that department first that we can shift around? And if they need it, fine, and if not, it might be available for somebody else. But, yeah, Ed?
And just shooting from the hip, there is, and I'm going by my memory here, so I believe it was like $9,000 and some change, could have been a little bit more than that, that actually when they declined some of our Phase 2 or requests. We did not actually get to requests to the total dollar amount that the state would have allocated
were
for us.
allocated, yes.
So I do know that there's $9,000 and some change
Yeah.
out there that we never actually
I think that is
got
true.
to request, so.
That is true, because we had some things that we thought were going to get
Yeah.
qualified, and they did not qualify at the last
Yeah,
minute.
so in the school departments, shall we say, corner or whatever, I will say that's some funding that wouldn't be taken from another department, if you wanted to look at it that way.
Okay. Good point.
So, right, so procedural-wise, does this ever come back to this body, or is the chair and Ed just going to handle this on their own?
Well, it's basically been Ed's department. I just volunteered to help.
So this is outside the select board's authority
Well, I
to
mean, if-
determine if there's any repurpose
I think it would be more reprogramming, that would be through Ed, pretty
outside
much.
of the select board's
Outside of the select
authorize
board,
it.
yeah,
Yeah, the select board originally
yeah,
authorized
yeah,
Christine and myself
to work on the CARES stuff.
to take this on and get it
And-
through, so.
Then I make a motion that any repurpose of funds have to come to the select board for approval before it's done, with the town administrator's recommendation on what to do.
Why?
Why? Because I think there was a previous body that approved that. There's since been an election. We have funds that are now available in the middle of a financial crisis, and that this body, if we're going to repurpose, should be fully aware of it and take a vote to do it with the town administrator's recommendation, but not leave, the 100,000 over there just to be
Well, no,
pulled
absolutely.
out as
Yeah.
one individual may see fit. Nothing against the town administrator. I want to be clear. I just want to be in the loop on this. And if nobody else on the select board feels it's necessary, then
Okay.
that's fine.
I think it should be done with our knowledge. I don't know that, I would have to say that I would trust the people who are, putting this reallocation plan together to make the right decisions. So I don't find it necessary to go line by line. I'm willing to authorize them to do that, but do want the details for information purposes.
Okay.
Can you repeat the language of your motion?
Just that before any repurpose of the funds is done, is that it be brought to the select board on the town administrator's recommendation of what to do. And then we ratify.
Okay, it's just going to be
Is-
pushing it very, very close,
So
because
brought
we
to
meet
the
on the
select board's
26th, and this has to be
attention.
done by the 29th, so
I'm happy to have, I can attend a special meeting. if
we don't
needed.
need a special meeting for this. We got too many special meetings already for the select board.
But, I mean, in all honesty, I raised the issue
No,
2
we
weeks
just got
ago.
one, yeah, I mean, and there's time in a sense, I mean, we've got a department head meeting on the 14th, if, we know some people that have come in with requests already, again, it's got to be COVID-related, it's got to be things that, it cannot be some of the things that we've heard tonight.
I agree. I don't think it's within our best interest to have the town administrator continue to chase all this stuff down. I think every department out there, I know that, if they're not watching tonight, they're going to watch this video tomorrow, while they're here, and they're going to see that we're talking about this. It should not be the TA's responsibility to be chasing everybody, figuring out what it is. There's a deadline. If they don't submit it, they don't submit it. Here's my recommendation, boom, boom, boom. You're free to do with X with Y, and here's what I think you can do with it based on what qualifies under COVID. And then we just draw, but I think it's giving the town administrator more authority to take a strong stance, knowing that we're going to back him to just get this done and not kick the can down, but.
There's no, yeah,
I don't mean that these should be done in the absence of the department heads. It's not what, I'm not advocating that.
no, they're the ones that have to request it in
Right.
the first place. I mean, yeah, so, fine, okay, I hear a motion on the floor, does anybody want to second it?
I'll second it.
All right.
Well, I feel kind of out of the loop.
Right.
And it would be helpful to know if money was being repurposed, like why it was on the table and what it's going to be repurposed for, and et cetera.
And I just go back to, if we're taking this stance, we're sending the message. It's not like, oh, Ed sends out another request, well, maybe I'll get to it, maybe or not, there's no hurry. No, there's a hurry. there's a deadline approaching, Ed has his marching orders, Ed's gonna do what he needs to do to get his done, and I have no doubt that we're gonna approve whatever his recommendation is, but it's just sending the message, respond to that email if you're gonna respond, because if you don't come back looking for the money later.
Okay, all set.
Oh, yeah, that's putting the
Yeah, no, I mean,
responsibility back on the department head, which is fine.
Right, and, you know, it may very well be that we don't end up using all of this money that we've been allocated. It could very well be. I mean, you know, we, like I said, we still have some here that hasn't been used yet, and I highly doubt that we're gonna be
Going to, yeah.
finding things that are qualifiable now because it tightened up or shifted in terms of their priorities. So, Ed, any particular comments, thoughts? No? All right. Okay, can we have a vote? I hear a motion in a second. Could we have a vote, please? All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Any opposed?
Aye. Nay.
Nay? I'm going to abstain because I'm part of this. So I hear a 2-1-1, so we will come back to you with a notion of what and how things will be repurposed for the October 26th meeting.
Yeah, believe me, I'm not saying we should not have access to the information. I'm just talking about the decision-making process here. So with that, I understand that we're doing it that way. That's fine.
That's fine. Okay. All right, let's keep on moving. American Rescue Act, any further things there, Ed? I mean, we know what they've told us before, but you had some
Yeah.
ideas of how we might use some of this money at some point?
Yeah, like I said, I still feel that we can, I know that we can use it for any police trainings that are required due to the changes in the Police Reform Act. I am 90%, I'll say 95% certain that we can use it in the use of upgrading our website. We know the infrastructure allowances already. We can use it for premium pay.
The phone system?
What's that?
The phone system?
I really have not seen a direct correlation to the phone system as of yet.
Infrastructure, okay.
Might be worth asking somehow if we could figure that out. You know, if you think about, I don't know, less services at town hall being in person, I don't know. Not sure, but, you know.
Yeah, and I think John had made the point earlier, if we wanted to tie something like open checkbook to a new financial system, I think we could push the new financial system, through that way, because you're putting that information out on the town website.
Yeah.
But,
Well, I think, you know, how would you like to proceed? I know we've been talking about getting together with the water commissioners or, you know, anything, but I mean.
I do know, because from another project, I had a chance to talk with Tom, and their number one priority, and I'll forget the exact footage now, is to replace the water line here on College Highway, and I believe it's about 10,000 feet worth, which is, fairly expensive. I think it's about just under $3 million to do the 10,000 feet. So, we had talked about that. It basically ends up at Pomeroy Meadow Road, and Tom was saying, well, they'll have to do it in phases just because of the overall cost of replacing that section, or those sections. And, I had brought it up because of the ARPA funds, and we had started talking, and, if we could maybe utilize 10% of their project cost, which would equate to somewhere around $300,000 of ARPA funds, it would help, probably move another section of that along and get it done quicker.
But I think the intent is not to use all of the money on one particular project, though, right?
No, but
Yeah.
in total, we're due to receive $1.8 million, so.
Over time.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and I know there'd been some mention about maybe something, I don't know how, but something tied to the idea of the public safety complex, et cetera. So who knows? I mean, there's ideas out there, but two things. First of all, I forgot, and I think if you mentioned it, I forgot, but on Reni's note, there will be a public safety complex meeting coming up, I believe, October 25th at 4 o'clock. So that is getting going. But what I've seen with other towns, and so here's a question, just because I feel like we aren't, we sort of know the big topics, but yet we're not being able to take steps forward on this. What I've seen with other towns, and I think Northampton is one, maybe Easthampton too, is that they've put out like a community survey, but an online Survey Monkey kind of thing, to the townspeople to say, okay, here's what, the ARPA money can get us, and granted, they're getting a whole lot bigger money than we are, but nonetheless, in the interest of town involvement and transparency and getting ideas from people, whether we think that would be a worthwhile approach to also do something like that. It's basically a Survey Monkey kind of thing. It's not a very complicated, it was probably a 5 or 6 question survey, I would think. I don't know if that's a worthwhile use of our time to do that.
I think especially, well, that's 2 questions, right? So
Yeah.
question number 1, should we do it, is because other communities have done it, and a lot of them have, it would be very easy to do something that I call R&D. So we just request and duplicate it,
Yeah.
put our town seal on it and send it out. From what I've seen, they've been kind of like general
Yeah,
comments and feedback or solicitation to kind of gauge the group.
yeah.
So I see that as a positive because it's public engagement, right? So it's helping. Who would do that within, that's the second question. I don't know who would get saddled with that or be able to do it. That's just my initial thoughts.
Yep. No, I mean, all of those things, even when we, it was, it would be quote unquote, all the volunteers, right? I mean, the folks, when we did the community survey for master plan, I mean, it was, we worked as a committee to put it together, but then it was put out through PVPC to put it online for us. But, yeah, I mean, there's various people, I'm sure, that are very adept at Survey Monkey. I'm
Good
not,
point.
but, I don't know. Ed, any?
I'll see who I can find that
Yeah,
might be good at that. I mean, it will give us a gauge as to, how the community feels. Do they feel there are a lot of, social needs like, rental assistance, food assistance, testing clinics, vaccine clinics, what have you, versus some, other things of, whether it's infrastructure improvements or, premium pay or what, website updates.
Okay. Well, let's investigate that a little bit and see, maybe we can, I'm sure we can put our hands on the one from Easthampton and Northampton and see what that involved as well, but, okay.
And then, Chris, just on those lines,
Yep.
I forgot it before on the liaison report, but at some point in a previous meeting, the select board approved or acknowledged that Joy and I were to attend a meeting.
Oh, yeah,
With department heads,
Right,
specifically on the topic of premium pay.
yes,
So, Joy can jump in after me, but it was a very, from my point of view, it was a very informative conversation. I don't even think it lasted a full hour. They were well prepared and had their facts laid out and their reasoning and logic behind it. We made some observations of, well, here's a couple questions that I have just looking at this. They took that as constructive feedback. They're going to update what they're going to present in I believe, probably the next cycle for the select board meeting. They'll be looking to present that to us for consideration.
good, okay, great, glad they got together.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything to add. It was very well put together.
Mhm.
I think they just they're gonna update some of their information.
Okay,
We had, like I said, we had a couple questions.
Mhm. All right.
Yeah, so it should be a very informative meeting.
great, all right, well, we'll see what they come up with, great. All right, let's jump then to the revenue and expenditures of 2021. We have a report here. And Ed, we've got revenues, and we still have almost all the end-of-year transfers, but not quite all yet. Is that right? Or am I wrong on that? 2021. So if we're looking at the total general fund, for example, is that?
Yeah, I don't, those are the ones that were done like a town meeting, so this does not reflect the ones that were the departmental transfers at the end of May and June.
Okay, I thought
But on the bottom line, those transfers would have a zero impact, right? Because it's an account that's over, you're just using
Right,
it
you
to...
just,
Right, it just will give you a better idea of the accounts that actually
yeah,
finished in the negative.
If I'm reading this right, which I don't think I am, but my first stab at this was, had a budget of $27 million in expenses. We actually spent 22, so we underspent by 5.3, but we were short in revenue by 3.5 million, which would indicate our free cash is going to be $1.8 million.
Yeah, it's not going to be the case. so.
Well, that-
Yeah. And it's
Oh,
like,
I wish it was.
yeah, and it's like with some of the revenues going through them, it's like, I know that some of them have to be still off due to some journal entries. It's like I looked at ambulance fees, it said minus $100,000. We hadn't received any. I know we got turnovers for ambulance receipts, so I'm thinking that, okay, it went into one account and needs a journal entry to go into another one.
But that would still be a zero impact.
Well, as long as that
long
other
as the
account
receipts in there, so, yeah.
is shown on here, yes. You're correct.
Yeah. As far as revenue, what jumped out at me was on page 6 of the revenues is all our permits, inspection fees and all that. We collected exactly what we budgeted, not a penny over across the board.
I've asked that question over and over again. Why does it always match exactly if there was no estimate made? So I don't know how you plan a budget if you don't estimate what you think you're gonna bring in.
I mean, we do have revenue revisions on that page of 218,000, but then revised estimated revenue
Yeah.
at 265, and then actual at 231. Is that right?
Yeah.
I'll look further into that,
Yeah.
find out for
So, I
you.
mean, as we look at this, I mean, we've got the general fund page on page 2, right, which is our basic,
564,000.
all right, so estimated revenue at 17,979,000. Actual at 18,543,000, so basically a surplus of 564,000 on page 2 on the general fund. But then, John, you were looking at page whatever, 16? Very end?
6.
6.
Oh, 6, I'm sorry. No, but when you read the,
Oh, I took the total, yeah, I took the total, the last pages of both, revenue and expenses, and put those two numbers together. Under revenue, what is tax exemptions?
yeah, the first page, tax exemptions.
Because we were anticipating it to be 40,000, and we only get 7,500. Is that for like the blind and elderly exemptions from the state,
Veterans?
where they offset our,
It could be versus an abatement. I'll check and let you know.
So it's essentially this set of accounts that we would have to have Eric or somebody, Eric Kirchhoff, the firm we're talking about, take a look at, right? And
That would be one of them, correct.
look at page 3 with the school, I mean, so this added together, the estimated with the revisions to come up with $1,088,000. And then the actual is the exact same number in the revenue revisions, and you're showing a deficit of $76,000. I don't understand.
The account may have been set up to show that anything that went into actual revenue goes into the revenue revisions. Again, I didn't set this up, so I'd have to look at it.
It may, well, hopefully there's more revenue receipts that need to be posted for 21.
Yeah, that's-
And so the other special revenue funds, that's where any of the grants would be, pretty much, that we've gotten? Not only that, but
Sounds right.
there's a public
Should be the
safety,
24 accounts, yeah, other special revenue funds.
the public safety bicycle grants and a couple of ESSER grants, things like
Correct.
that. Yeah, we might just do a double check on that too, because I think with the grant committee, we were trying to keep a list of the grants that were received. And I know there were odds and ends from the police and the fire, but they showed up somewhere else, didn't they? Didn't I see those? Thinking I saw them in another page here. When there was, not, aside from the grant committee itself, there were other ones, but they might have been in this fiscal year. I may be wrong on that. So maybe it was just those few. Yeah. So what do we think, what do we know? What are our concerns that we see from here?
Trying to figure out, we have enough money to have closed out.
Hmm.
Comparing the revenue and the expense.
Well, I'm just shooting from the hip here, but my guess is I think a lot of this will get flushed out once we're able to get somebody to dive into it and dig into it, because there should be, and I'm fairly confident that they're out there should be pretty good check guards already in place, because these reports are coming from the town accountant, or town accountant, right?
The financial software system.
Right, and aren't they, isn't that the office of the gatekeeper?
Yes.
Right, so there should be either there will be a separate set of books. For example, any money that comes into the town is coming into a designated bank account controlled by the treasurer, right? And,
Right.
So there's got to be reconciliations going back and forth with probably some identified or unidentified items, outstanding items. And this is really what this independent third person needs to be, is just come in and dedicate, look at this and drive through it. Hopefully 4 or 5 weeks at 40 hours a week. And
like I say, I have an idea that some of these just didn't have journal entries for them,
yeah. Because I'm just going back to, Chris, your report on the CARES money, right? We know we have invoices for that, but those would have hit those individual line items. They weren't all being expensed to offset the CARES Act, because the CARES line item in here just shows the revenue coming in.
Right.
So that you'd be doing your entries back and forth to alleviate that account.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, any questions on that, or would you like to look at the FY22 report that's here too? That's in our package, the beginning, expense report at least?
Last thing I would say on 21 is I do like interest and penalties were 152% over collection. So that's good.
Uh-huh. Well, like I say too, basically, I mean, if this is true, or we've done a great job at collecting the real estate taxes.
Yep.
Looks like dab more than what we had projected here, if this is accurate. You know, so there's been some good work on that level to get money in the hopper. But there were, I guess, yeah, on page 2, the one that struck me too is just this earnings on investments. We had estimated 20,000 and looks like 8,000.
Yeah, it was a very poor year for earnings on investments.
Whatever we're invested in is maybe a challenge here.
Well, we're limited to what we can invest in.
Right. And how come we were less on the PEG programming? I thought we had a set amount.
We still estimated it when we do the revenues and the
Okay.
expenses. Basically, they end up matching, but you still have to pick a number at the beginning of the year where you think they're going to come in at. And I know that I think it was the last quarter for our charter payments, I thought was down a few $1,000s, so.
They make sense. Which one?
So I just, back on the earnings and investments, that would fall under the treasurer, but and Ed's right, I think what Ed's referring to is either the prudent person or the legalist. So the legalist is ultra-conservative, hasn't been updated since 1952, and still holds railroad bonds as what you should invest in. So most communities have adopted what's the prudent person, which means no more than 25% of your investment can be in equities, and it limits only the blue chip stocks. And several other communities, matter of fact, West Springfield has just switched over to that model. They used to have the advisor that the town uses now. So I think, again, there's only so much people can do and limited bandwidth, so.
Yeah, your biggest part is basically your earnings on your bank accounts for your interest and whatever, so yeah. So it follows the market.
All right, well, I think this just points out that we just need to hopefully get back in touch with Eric and see if he's available. If he's not available, we go to at least find out the second person that Jen had recommended and just see who we can get in here to do this. And
I'm sorry, Chris, I thought we talked earlier about, I was going to commit to, Ed asked me to help him prepare the RFP,
Yes.
and we were going to send them to all three.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
sure.
okay.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
sorry, yes. Yes.
Yep.
Correct, you're correct. I'm just listing out names of people that we had agreed upon, but yes, you're right. That is the procedure, correctamundo, but
Okay.
sooner rather than later, yes, so we can get this one tidied up. All right, any other discussion you'd like to have on the expense report, either beginning of FY '22? So this is the beginning of what Bradley's starting to do here?
Yes.
Okay. And so this would not have the revenue side yet. He's going to be working on that too, or?
No, we don't have a revenue report as of yet.
Yeah, there's a few pages of FY '22.
First thing will be to
Okay,
finish
yeah,
off the
okay.
expense report and add in all the revolving accounts and grants from the previous fiscal year to have a balance to carry over.
And when do we need to get in any kind of reports to the state? But, I don't know, whatever we have to do to certify free cash and all that kind of stuff, we're not going to be,
November, December.
yeah.
Schedule A, usually it's past the deadline, but they accept it into January.
Can I just make an observation here? If we in fact end up going down the road where we're going to ask for that article at the special town meeting about the audit, that if we do that, at that same meeting, we utilize the time to clean up the town account and expense line item, because that's all part of the same story. Instead of an expense line sitting.
I was going to do that anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just,
Yeah.
it sticks out like a sore thumb.
Right.
891%.
Oh,
Yeah, that was one of the articles I was going to recommend.
Okay, if nothing else, we'll keep on moving on. Anything else? No?
Nope.
All right. The Green Community Grant,
Nothing new since the last meeting.
all right. Our Cost Efficiencies Committee discussions, I've seen some ideas of people that might want to join in. I think we haven't totally got it well understood about the intent, and I'm sorry if I made it too complicated.
Okay, we're getting there.
We're getting there? Okay.
Yeah, I think the groups finally understand that, okay, it's not separate, it's, as a group, you have to get together and
Yeah,
basically elect one person
right.
from one of those sub-entities of those groups. The only one I've gotten confirmation of so far that has done that and has a representative is Group 2, and that is Ian Illingsworth will be, our police chief will be representing Group 2.
Okay, good, all right.
And for that reason, I think I had mentioned that perhaps we should, the due date was today to have everyone selected, and that's come and gone.
Yep.
So we need to, and it's happened because some of the committees have not yet met
Right.
since we asked for the request, so I'm thinking
Well-
that we should just set an extension date and let people make, now that they understand how it works, let them all meet with their respective committees and come forward, and then meet together those people who were selected, so out of the selected group, they can pick their final candidate.
Yeah,
Exactly. And one good example of that is the Water Commission isn't meeting until tomorrow night. so-
right, right.
Yep.
So with that, how about a new date suggestion? Is 2 weeks from now reasonable, or do we want to, since we've set probably a November 2nd meeting, would you like to go that far?
I would think 2 weeks should be reasonable.
I think 2 weeks is
Okay,
reasonable.
so let's aim that we have them in hand by the 26th so that we can set up a meeting in November, all right? That would be great.
At what point do we select the public?
That information has been out on our website,
It
right?
is, yeah.
And I think Robert put it in his
But
newsletter.
I'm just saying, on the
Yeah.
26th, is that when we're going
Oh.
to try and identify who those individuals are?
I don't know if we.
So they could meet on, or not, I don't know.
Or you
um,
need someone to volunteer
In each of
on
those
that level
categories.
first.
Yeah, I don't know that we've had any volunteers yet, so,
And I
Power
guess
sit-
we would
Power
be-
sits with the chair.
We would say,
Oh, for the
out of the
public.
people who volunteer,
Oh.
we would ultimately select, right?
Gotcha,
right,
okay.
yeah. Right. Well, yeah, so anybody from the public.
Those members of the public that would like to be
who's
considered
listening,
for
yes.
this.
So we have, we've been trying to recruit for 3 members for the committee that have a financial management and/or HR background. You are more than welcome to join us. Please just contact Ed Gibson with your information, and we'd love to get people involved that are not part of our normal committee work here. So anybody who's listening and feels like they've got the skills that would contribute to this, especially if you've had background in doing these kinds of exercises about how to be more cost efficient and how we can share services or whatever we can do to provide better services to town for a reasonable cost, we'd love to have you join us. So please do reach out before the 26th of October, and we'll hopefully get a committee instituted and meeting in November. All right, is there any other business that can't wait until the regular meeting on the 26th? Yes, John?
So I would just, for public record purposes, I'd like to draw everyone's attention to a report from the state auditor, Susan Bump, on an article that was first published in the Berkshire Eagle on October 5th, titled, "Auditor, Poor Rural Towns in Massachusetts Aren't Getting the Help They Need to Keep Up with the Wealthy Ones." Within that article, her office issued a finding titled "Public Infrastructure in Western Mass, a Critical Need for Regional Investment and Revitalization," dated October 5th. Her office had 5 findings and 3 recommendations. At the very top level, or 50,000 feet, the three recommendations were an immediate overhaul of the Chapter 90 formula and a dedicated revenue stream similar to the 1 cent that comes off the state sales tax that funds the MSBA, or the Massachusetts School Building Authority. Broadband continuity throughout the rural 4 counties of Western Mass, and public infrastructure authority be created for the renovation, for the sole purpose of renovation, replacement of municipal buildings with a target on small rural towns or rural towns under 10,000. I think that the fact that our state auditor has announced that she is not running for reelection and that this is out, I think we should grab this microphone and draft some sort of communication as the body as a whole to get behind this and to draw other communities in the 4 counties in and really put the pressure on Boston to abide by her findings. And I think in order for us to draft this, and I'm happy to start the draft and have Ed tweak it afterwards for grammar and English. Chapter 90, I'd like to get our highway superintendent's thoughts on this. And then I'd like to send the communication and the article over to the public safety meeting that's coming up. I think it's all timely, and I think if we all get behind it, and the more select boards that we can get on this, and maybe petition as a group, maybe we'll get enough.
That'd be a great idea, to try and connect with other select boards and do that, yeah. In fact, there was a meeting, I think, did I not see one from Worthington? They were organizing some meeting around this, I believe. So I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's got the small bridges, it's got everything that we would like.
It does, yep. And it could even apply to the old town hall, too, in terms of, renovation of buildings and/or those kinds of things. So, yeah, no, it was a very, very timely article, very, very well written, very detailed. So, yeah, no, good point. So let's keep that on the
So if there's
radar.
no objection, I'll share it and copy Ed on it, and then I'll come up with a draft of
Okay, let's
for
start
our
that. And I think I
consideration.
have seen something, I'll check in my emails, but I think I've seen some sort of a meeting that's getting organized.
Okay.
But I'll double check that and share it around if there is. Okay. Good.
I
All
just
right.
have one thing,
Yes.
sorry. It slipped my mind, but there is actually an open space committee meeting. It is October 21st at 6 PM, and thank you, Cindy Palmer, for reminding me. I
Okay.
just wanted to get that out to the public before I forgot.
All right, sounds good. Okay. All right, yep, anything else?
I just wanted to mention about, the redistricting is in process or already has happened in terms of our representation in Boston, and it's changing. I think,
I didn't see that.
so, I mean, for us, Lindsay has been very helpful in getting some things, brought things to our way, so that's going to be different, so we have to build another relationship.
Any thoughts on where we might be going?
Oh, it's already been, yes, we'll be represented out of Westfield, I believe.
For the state rep?
Yes. Whoever is and I don't know the name, but whoever, they kind of reshuffled the deck and reassigned districts to the current representatives. And Southampton is no longer within Lindsay Sabados's district.
Okay, had not formally.
We
heard
fall into the district of someone, of the representative from Westfield.
So you're saying Lindsay Sabados is not our representative
that.
anymore?
Going forward,
I
apparently.
mean, as of the first of the
With the
year.
redistricting, we knew the redistricting was happening, but last time we had heard from her, she seemed to feel relatively comfortable that she would be able to stay with Southampton. So whatever's happened with population shifting, all around.
How many reps does Westfield have right now? Isn't it just one?
One.
Yeah, it's
It's
one.
one.
So we fall under the rep for Westfield, parts of Chicopee. That's the old Knappich seat, right?
Right.
Or almost, yeah.
So while we're thinking about contacting, and
Yep.
that might be something we would like to add.
What, lobby to get Lindsay back?
Well, no, I'm saying, bring it to the attention. I think,
Yeah. No,
overall,
it's
she's
true. I
worked
mean,
very well
Yeah,
on
she's
behalf
been
of the town.
very supportive, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, that's a shame if
While we're
we
looking
Could we
for
schedule
support
a
for these
meeting
things,
with
'cause
the new rep?
She was helping us
we
with
lose her.
this.
Well, yeah, once we figure out who that is, yeah. And
Okay, when we
I mean,
figure it
yeah,
out.
Once it's official, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
once it's really out there. And I think
It's out
the,
there now.
No, but I mean, officially it
Yeah.
is. I mean, but I think usually I would assume they would try to make a tour too. If they've got new towns that are their bailiwick, they would hopefully approach us too. That would be nice, but anyway, yes, we would need to do that at some point. Okay, I don't think we have any personnel change forms, PCFs, PRFs tonight.
No.
We have one license and permit, one-day alcohol event for Conant Park. This is for Karen Porter.
Yes.
Saturday, 10/23, from 1 o'clock until 8 p.m. this Saturday. It's for a party, about 30 to 40 people. And I gather all the paperwork is in order here.
Yes, it is.
All right, if so, could I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, perfect. Okay. And then we have a set of minutes to approve for August 31st.
Motion to approve the minutes of Tuesday, August 31st, 6 PM, Select Board meeting.
Have a second on that?
I'll second it.
All right, I just have a question for discussion here. Under the report section, which is page 2, under Ed's report, the last bullet, the acquisition for the right-of-way from the Pioneer Valley Railroad for the Greenway, T.A. Gibson will reach out to the state for an extension of the $100,000 grant. First of all, so starting at the beginning, it says T.A. Gibson reported the acquisition for the right-of-way for the, we do not have the acquisition yet, so that's misleading, I think. We have a $100,000 grant to go towards the acquisition of
Yeah,
the right-of-way.
wasn't that really, didn't Ed update us that he had spoken with Pioneer Valley Railroad and they
Yes.
agreed to
They
abide by?
agreed to the price that they'd put in the MOU, so this is just misleading, I think, in terms of, so he's reported on the pickleball courts and on the interim accountant and the acquisition for the right-of-way, but it makes it sound to me like we've already acquired the right-of-way, which we have not. So I think we ought to just tweak that a little bit somehow.
How do you read that way?
The acquisition for the right-of-way for Pioneer Valley?
He reported the acquisition for the right-of-way from the Pioneer Valley Railroad for the Greenway.
Yeah, T.A. Gibson will reach out to the state for an extension of the $100,000 grant.
Well, I think what's missing is Pioneer Valley agreed to the acquisition of the,
The use of the grant for the acquisition.
So should it be
I think
switched
they
around?
just agreed to the price.
So T.A. Gibson will reach out to the state for an extension of the 100,000 grant
I'll
for
go
the
back,
for the
I will
acquisition?
go back and.
It makes it sound like we've,
I will go back and
What?
review the video to make sure that
yeah,
we're talking about
okay.
the same thing.
It just makes it sound that we
And then
already have it. We know we've got a whole year to go to get the whole acquisition.
I don't see it say we have the right-of-way there.
Okay,
So
well, that's the way
I read it a different way,
all
but,
right, I'll let you review it.
Maybe it's just regarding.
but like I say, August and September, it could be the meeting that I reported that Pioneer Valley Railroad had agreed to under the terms of that letter from 2018, but I
Yeah.
just want to make sure that was
I think that
the
is what
same
you
meeting.
reported. No, I think that's what you reported, but that is not what I really totally heard here.
Yeah.
And then just at the very bottom of the page, the last 3 words, there will be
T.A., yeah, that was
That's
the
it.
only thing.
Yeah.
minor things. With
I'll go
that,
back- Yeah, I'll go back and review the video and bring it back to you.
with that, could we, well,
So do you want us to table the minutes then?
well, we could, I mean,
Yeah, table them.
table? Okay, all right. So be it. All right. What else? Anything new on other pending items? Town hall?
No.
Charter building, former road? We're still also reaching out to Charter for their map, right, for that broadband thing?
Yeah, I'm gonna
Right.
send him a reminder email. I can't believe it takes him this long to produce a map.
Exactly. All right, and the naming rights, we might take a look at that at our next meeting too. We had talked about looking at a bylaw on that.
I was going to say, does the board have a preference if it be done either by policy or bylaw? And I mean, and if it does, I can just reach out to Michelle Randazzo and say, you know, I mean, if your preference is bylaw, I can reach out and say, do you have any examples of bylaws for naming rights? Or if your preference is a policy, I can say the same thing. Or I can just reach out and say, do you have any examples of policies or bylaws and recommendation for naming rights?
Right, I mean, is there any advantage to one over the other in terms of, I mean, a policy would not have to go to town meeting, is that?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we do have a draft of a bylaw, but it might be similar to do a policy.
Yeah,
Simpler.
might be simpler to do a policy. But
And then it's easier to change later if people want, if select boards want to change it.
yeah, might be easier to do a policy rather than that, but why don't we,
It's always easier to do a policy.
yeah, why don't we reach out and find out if they have any recommendations for us, then that'd be fun.
Well,
Okay. All right, so with that, next select board meeting, October 26th, and then I guess we've decided now on November 2nd,
Right.
November 9th.
and actually, we have an executive session scheduled for October 19th.
We do,
We will.
next Tuesday, really? Yeah,
Yeah, we had filled in the odd Tuesdays with the executive
right,
session.
okay, I
So
didn't know that you'd had another
so-
meeting yet.
Is the board's preference to have that, rather than at 6:45 again?
Yes,
Okay,
that's my,
okay, well, no, I kind of got that hint last time, so I just, because I got to schedule a meeting,
Yeah,
I just wanted to make sure I
okay.
read everything right.
That sounds good. All right, and that's fine. And then just a reminder for the October 26th meeting, rather, we'll have our reports in from the Planning Board, Zoning and Housing, the Parks Commission.
Yep.
And Master Plan will give a report as well. Okay? So with that, could I have a motion to adjourn our meeting?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we are adjourned at 9:51. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you all.
All right.